Item 7 on today's agenda, introduction of new major shareholder representative. The words hung in the air of TechFusion's executive boardroom. 12 board members shifted in their Italian leather chairs, curious about this unexpected addition. At the head of the polished mahogany table, CEO Nate Reed checked his Patek Philippe watch with mild irritation. Quarterly meetings were already tedious enough without last-minute surprises. The boardroom doors opened. Every head turned as she entered. Confident strides, impeccable charcoal suit, not a hint of hesitation. For a moment, the only sound was the soft click of her heels against marble flooring. "Gentlemen, lady," the chairman nodded to the sole female board member. "Please welcome Olivia Parker Hayes, representing Horizon Investments' 15% stakeholder position." The portfolio she placed on the table made barely a sound, but to Nate Reed, it might as well have been a bomb detonating. 20 years of carefully constructed walls crumbled in an instant. His knuckles whitened around his Mont Blanc pen. "Thank you, Chairman," Olivia said, her voice steady. "I appreciate the opportunity to address the board today." Their eyes met across 20 feet of polished wood. The woman he'd left pregnant and alone 2 decades ago, now sitting among the power players of his company. No dramatic confrontation, no accusations, just the calculated precision of a chess master who had waited patiently to reveal her position. "Miss Hayes has some concerns regarding our ethical frameworks and sustainability practices," the chairman continued, oblivious to the silent earthquake reshaping the room. Nate's throat constricted as 20 years of buried history surged to the surface. This wasn't just a business meeting. This was Judgment Day.
"Hey there, Mr. Ross here."
Welcome back to another journey down the story trail. If you're new, you've joined us at the perfect moment, a tale of wealth, betrayal, and the most calculated revenge you'll ever witness. Before we continue this incredible true story, take a second to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when this abandoned wife finally reveals her master plan 2 decades in the making. Now, let's get back to that boardroom where Nate Reed is about to face the ghost of his past. The chairman's voice faded into background noise as Nate desperately tried to regain his composure. 20 years since he'd seen those eyes. The same intelligent, determined eyes that had once looked at him with love, now assessed him with cool, professional detachment. Gone was the heartbroken woman he'd left behind. In her place sat a formidable business leader whose very presence made the air feel charged with tension. The other board members sensed it too, exchanging curious glances at their CEO's unusual silence. "Mr. Reed?" prompted the chairman. "Miss Hayes has asked about our position on data privacy in the European markets." Nate cleared his throat, forcing his CEO mask back into place. Of course. Privacy has always been a cornerstone of TechFusion's mission. Olivia's slight smile told him she knew exactly how hollow those words were. She placed a single document in front of each board member. Page 1 outlines how TechFusion has systematically prioritized profit over user privacy for the past 5 years. The room went silent. 12 pairs of eyes widened at the meticulously documented evidence. Page 2 details security vulnerabilities your team identified but chose not to fix due to cost concerns. Nate felt sweat beating at his temples. These were internal decisions, discussed only in closed-door meetings with his most trusted executives. Page 3 shows the environmental impact of your server farms compared to industry standards. Each revelation landed like a precision strike. How did she know? Who had given her this information? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Olivia asked, addressing the entire board but looking directly at Nate. Someone who promised partnership but abandoned you when it became inconvenient? Several board members nodded, instantly connecting to their own experiences with betrayal. "Today isn't about personal vendetta," she continued. "It's about accountability. When leaders prioritize short-term gains over long-term ethics, everyone loses eventually." She laid out the consequences: regulatory risks, consumer backlash, talent exodus, all issues TechFusion was already beginning to face. "The question before us today isn't just about business strategy," Olivia said, her voice commanding attention. "It's about redemption. Can a company built on cutting corners transform into an ethical leader, or will it continue down a path that benefits few at the expense of many?" The stakes crystallized for everyone in the room. This wasn't merely about quarterly profits anymore. It was about the very soul of what they'd built. As board members peppered Olivia with questions, Nate's mind raced through calculations more complex than any business problem he'd ever faced. This wasn't just about TechFusion's ethical practices. This was about the past catching up to him with perfect, devastating precision. "One final point," Olivia said, closing her presentation. "Horizon Investments believes TechFusion has the potential to lead the industry in ethical innovation. We're prepared to increase our investment substantially if meaningful changes are implemented." The chairman leaned forward. What sort of changes? A complete ethical overhaul. Transparency. Accountability. She paused. New leadership if necessary. The threat couldn't be clearer. 20 years ago, Nate had discarded Olivia for his ambition, believing nothing could touch his rise to power. Now she held the fate of his empire in her hands. As the meeting adjourned, Nate remained frozen in place while others filed out. Only when the room emptied did Olivia approach him. "Hello, Nate. It's been a while." 5 simple words that carried 2 decades of untold history. "Why now?" he managed to ask. Her smile was enigmatic. "Because now you have something to lose." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "By the way, your daughter graduates from Stanford next month. PhD in ethical computing. She's brilliant. Everything you missed by walking away." The door closed quietly behind her, leaving Nate alone with the revelation that would shatter his carefully constructed world forever. Autumn leaves scattered across the campus pathways as Olivia Parker hurried toward the economics building. At 22, her mind buzzed with theories and market analyses rather than parties or campus romances. Top of her class and laser-focused on her future in finance, she balanced a coffee and 3 heavy textbooks while reviewing mental notes for a presentation. She never saw him until the collision. Coffee splashed across imported Italian leather shoes worth more than her monthly rent. Textbooks tumbled to the ground, pages fluttering in the October breeze. "I'm so sorry." Olivia dropped to her knees, frantically trying to save her notes from the puddle forming on the concrete. The owner of the ruined shoes crouched beside her. "It's fine, really." When she looked up, her apology died on her lips. The man before her wasn't angry. He was smiling. Warm brown eyes crinkled at the corners, studying her with unexpected interest. "I'm Nate," he said, gathering her scattered economics papers. "Nate Reed. Olivia Parker." She accepted his help, noticing his confident hands and the expensive watch on his wrist. "I really am sorry about your shoes." He glanced down dismissively. They needed breaking in anyway. Looking at her recovered papers, his eyebrows raised. "Advanced theoretical market dynamics? That's graduate level. I got permission to take it early." She stood, suddenly self-conscious under his scrutiny. "Professor Harrington's class? I'm headed there now." They walked together, her embarrassment fading as conversation flowed. At 25, Nate was finishing his MBA while simultaneously launching a tech startup. His casual mention of venture capital meetings and prototype development should have intimidated her, but instead, Olivia found herself asking pointed questions about his business model. "Most people's eyes glaze over when I talk about data security infrastructure." Nate laughed as they reached the classroom. Olivia smiled. "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed, holding her gaze a moment longer than necessary. "You're definitely not." Their first official date wasn't dinner or a movie. It was a tech conference where Nate was speaking about encryption protocols. Olivia sat in the audience, absorbing every word, asking questions that impressed even the senior developers. Later, over coffee, they debated market applications until the cafe staff politely asked them to leave at closing time. "You understand both sides," Nate said, walking her home under starlight. "The technical complexity and the business implications. Do you know how rare that is?" What began as intellectual admiration quickly deepened. Nate found in Olivia what he'd never experienced before, an equal, someone who challenged his thinking, refined his ideas, and pushed him toward greater innovation. For Olivia, Nate represented both, brilliance and possibility, someone who saw her analytical mind as an asset rather than something to be downplayed. Their courtship unfolded through economics lectures and coding sessions, late-night discussions about market trends, and early morning brainstorming over breakfast. While other couples exchanged movie tickets and dinner reservations, they exchanged research papers and business proposals. "Your security algorithm has potential," Olivia said one evening, 6 months into their relationship. They sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, surrounded by printouts and half-empty takeout containers. "But your market positioning needs work." Nate looked up from his laptop. "What's wrong with it?" "You're targeting too broad. Focus on financial institutions first. They have immediate needs and budgets to match." She handed him a spreadsheet she'd created, outlining potential clients and revenue projections. He studied it silently, then met her eyes with a mixture of awe and affection. "This is brilliant." "Just practical," she shrugged, but his admiration warmed her. "No," Nate shook his head. "You're brilliant, and I'm in love with you." The words hung between them, unexpected yet inevitable. Olivia smiled slowly. "That's fortunate," she replied, "because I've loved you since you explained quantum encryption to me over burnt coffee." 3 years of partnership, intellectual, emotional, visionary, culminated in a spring wedding. They exchanged vows beneath flowering cherry trees, promising to build not just a life but a legacy together. "We're going to change the world," Nate whispered as they danced at their reception. "You and me, together." Olivia believed him completely. Their first office was a converted garage with second-hand furniture and unreliable heating. TechFusion began with 3 employees: Nate, his college roommate Marcus as lead developer, and a recent computer science graduate named Ellie. What they lacked in resources, they made up for in vision. "We're redefining digital security," Nate explained during endless investor meetings, his enthusiasm infectious. "Not just protecting data, but revolutionizing how companies think about information integrity." Behind the scenes, Olivia became TechFusion's unofficial strategic advisor. Evenings found the newlyweds at their kitchen table, Olivia reviewing business plans while Nate refined algorithms. "The Henderson Group declined our proposal," Nate admitted one night, 6 months in. Frustration lined his face. "That's the 3rd potential investor this month." Olivia studied their financial projections. "Your technology is ahead of its time. That's both your strength and your challenge." "We're running out of runway," he sighed. 3 months of operating capital left." She took his hand. "Then we pivot. Target mid-sized banks instead of tech giants. They understand immediate security needs without requiring extensive proof of concept." Following Olivia's strategy, TechFusion secured its first major client, Midwest Financial Solutions. The contract barely covered expenses, but provided crucial credibility. More importantly, it demonstrated their technology in a real-world environment. 1 client became 3, 3 became 7. By their 2nd anniversary, TechFusion had moved to a proper office with 12 employees and a growing reputation for innovative security solutions. Their first major breakthrough came unexpectedly. When a prominent tech company suffered a catastrophic data breach, Nate appeared on several business news programs explaining how TechFusion's protocols could have prevented it. His articulate explanations of complex security concepts caught attention. "Clayton Capital called," Nate announced, bursting into their apartment late one evening. His eyes shone with excitement. "They want to discuss funding options." The investment changed everything. $5 million of venture capital transformed TechFusion from struggling startup to emerging industry player. They moved to larger offices, hired specialized talent, and expanded their product line. Through 18-hour workdays and constant pressure, their partnership remained solid. While Nate became the public face of TechFusion, Olivia provided the strategic foundation upon which their success was built. "We did it," Nate whispered on the night they closed their Series B funding, $20 million at a valuation that made them paper millionaires. "This is just the beginning." Olivia kissed him, sharing his triumph. "I never doubted you for a second." As TechFusion flourished, Olivia faced a crossroads. Her own finance career had progressed steadily, an associate position at Wellington Investment Group with promising advancement opportunities. Her manager had hinted at a senior analyst role opening soon. "We need someone with your analytical precision," he'd told her. "The promotion would mean more responsibility, but also recognition of your talent." That same week, Nate approached her with troubled eyes. "Our CFO resigned, taking a position with our competitor." "That's concerning timing," Olivia replied. "With the European expansion next quarter, we need someone who understands our vision and numbers." Nate hesitated. "Someone I trust completely." The unspoken requests hung between them. Olivia recognized the critical juncture. TechFusion needed financial leadership she could provide, but accepting meant abandoning her own carefully plotted career path. "It would be temporary," Nate added, "just until we stabilize the expansion." After 3 sleepless nights weighing options, Olivia submitted her resignation to Wellington. Her colleagues were shocked. She was walking away from a prestigious finance trajectory to join her husband's company. "You're making a mistake," her mentor warned during her exit interview. "Mixing marriage and business rarely ends well." Olivia smiled confidently. "Nate and I are different. We're partners in every sense." She threw herself into TechFusion with characteristic thoroughness. Her financial restructuring streamlined operations, her investor presentations secured additional funding, and her market analysis guided product development. Though she held no official title beyond financial consultant, her influence shaped every aspect of the company's growth. "The Milton contract is signed," she announced 6 months later, placing the paperwork on Nate's desk. 3-year commitment, 20% higher than our initial proposal. Nate looked up from his computer. "You're amazing. I couldn't do this without you." "We make a good team," she replied, believing it completely. The temporary arrangement stretched from months into years. Olivia's career at Wellington became a distant memory as TechFusion consumed both their lives. When investors insisted on hiring a formal CFO with Silicon Valley credentials, Olivia stepped back into an unofficial advisory role without complaint. "It's just optics," Nate assured her. You're still my most trusted advisor." She accepted this gracefully, focusing on their shared vision rather than her professional standing. When industry publications profiled TechFusion's meteoric rise, they highlighted Nate's innovation and leadership. Olivia appeared in photos as Nate Reed's wife, her strategic contributions unmentioned. At night, they still discussed business plans and market strategies. But increasingly, Nate executed these ideas without acknowledging their source. In board meetings, he presented Olivia's analyses as his own insights. "You don't mind, do you?" he asked when she mentioned it once. "It's all for our shared success." She didn't mind, not really. Their partnership transcended individual recognition. When TechFusion's valuation hit $100 million 5 years into their marriage, Olivia considered it their joint achievement, regardless of whose name appeared in headlines. To us, Nate toasted with champagne in their newly purchased mansion. The perfect team. Olivia clinked glasses, unaware that the foundation of their partnership had already begun to crack beneath the weight of success neither had been prepared to handle. Year 7 marked TechFusion's transformation from promising startup to industry titan. The breakthrough came with Pattern Shield, security software that detected unauthorized access patterns before breaches occurred. Major banks adopted it within months, followed by healthcare systems, government agencies, and tech giants. TechFusion revolutionizes cybersecurity paradigms, declared the Wall Street Journal. Fortune magazine placed Nate on its cover, dubbing him the security savior. TechFusion's valuation soared past $500 million, then hit the billion-dollar mark after securing contracts with 3 Fortune 10 companies. The original garage office became corporate headquarters, occupying 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. Staff expanded from dozens to hundreds. Development teams multiplied, each focused on specialized security applications. International offices opened in London, Tokyo, and Berlin. "We need to scale faster," Nate announced during an executive meeting. "Our competitors are racing to match Pattern Shield. We maintain advantage through expansion." Money flowed freely. The company jet, lavish client events, a promotional campaign featuring celebrities endorsing digital security. Expenses that would have shocked them years earlier now passed without comment. Olivia noticed the shift in financial priorities but recognized the necessary evolution. Growth requires investment, she reasoned, approving marketing budgets that exceeded their entire first-year operating costs. Success bred confidence that bordered on certainty. When TechFusion went public, the stock opened at triple the projected price. Overnight, paper wealth became liquid millions. Their net worth climbed so rapidly that financial advisors struggled to manage it properly. "This is what we dreamed about," Nate said, watching the stock ticker climb during their IPO. He squeezed Olivia's hand, eyes fixed on the numbers rather than her face. "Everything we worked for." She nodded, sharing his pride but noting how we had subtly transformed into I in his interviews. Success had arrived spectacularly, but brought unexpected baggage along with the wealth. The changes in Nate emerged gradually, almost imperceptibly. His wardrobe evolved first. Custom suits replaced off-the-rack options. Italian shoes, designer watches. His appearance became another aspect of the TechFusion brand. Then came the subtle language shifts. My company instead of our company. References to my vision rather than their shared dream. In media profiles, Olivia faded into background mentions, if mentioned at all. His schedule expanded to fill every available moment. Breakfast meetings, working lunches, evening networking events, weekends consumed by international calls accommodating global time zones. His accessibility, once their relationship's cornerstone, dwindled until even Olivia needed to schedule time through his executive assistant. "Can we talk about the Richardson proposal tonight?" Olivia asked one morning, catching him between meetings. Nate checked his watch. "Send me your analysis. I'll review it on the flight." "I'd prefer to discuss it directly," she pressed. "There are nuances to consider." "I trust your judgment," he replied, already moving toward the door. "Implement whatever you think best." The dismissal stung worse than disagreement would have. His confidence in her had transformed into indifference, delegating rather than collaborating. Power changed him in subtle ways. Staff members who questioned his decisions found themselves marginalized. Old friends from their startup days gradually disappeared from leadership roles, replaced by executives with prestigious pedigrees. The collaborative atmosphere that had defined early TechFusion evolved into hierarchical efficiency. "Success requires difficult choices," he explained when Olivia questioned the termination of Marcus, his former roommate and TechFusion's first employee. "We need specialized expertise now." The husband who had once valued Olivia's perspective above all others began surrounding himself with yes-men who reinforced his growing sense of infallibility. Board meetings became performances rather than discussions, with outcomes predetermined in private conversations. Most concerning was his diminishing ability to separate Nate Reed the man from Nate Reed the CEO. The boundaries between personal and professional identities blurred until the distinction all but vanished. Their spacious new home should have represented achievement. Instead, it became a symbol of their growing separation, 5,000 square feet where they increasingly lived parallel lives. Olivia might spend an entire evening in the library without encountering Nate in his home office. Physical distance mirrored emotional separation. Business trips stretched from days to weeks. Video calls replaced good morning kisses. Text messages substituted for conversations. Paris was productive, Nate would report, unpacking a suitcase only to repack for Tokyo. The European team needs restructuring. Olivia nodded, no longer asking for details he seemed reluctant to share. The intimacy of their early partnership, finishing each other's sentences, developing ideas together, faded into professional courtesy. Their social life transformed as well. Dinner parties became networking opportunities. Vacations included potential clients. Even their anniversary celebration doubled as a business function, with investors joining what should have been a private milestone. It's necessary, Nate explained when Olivia objected. These relationships drive our growth. Physical intimacy dwindled alongside emotional connection. Passion gave way to perfunctory affection, often interrupted by phone calls or emails. Nights when both were home and awake simultaneously became increasingly rare. "I miss you," Olivia said one evening, finding Nate working at midnight. He glanced up briefly. "I'm right here. Are you?" she challenged gently. His sigh conveyed irritation rather than understanding. "This acquisition requires my attention. The board expects complete diligence." Olivia retreated, recognizing that TechFusion had become not just their shared project, but her primary competitor for Nate's attention and commitment. A competition she increasingly found herself losing. The pregnancy wasn't planned. Between Nate's constant travel and their diminished intimacy, Olivia was shocked when 2 tests confirmed it. After the initial surprise, joy bloomed. Perhaps this would reconnect them, remind Nate of priorities beyond quarterly projections. She waited 2 weeks for the right moment. Their schedules finally aligned for a rare dinner at home, without clients or colleagues. Olivia prepared Nate's favorite meal, set the dining room with candles, and wore the dress he'd complimented months earlier. "This is unexpected," Nate commented, entering to find the formal setting. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," she replied. "Just us. For the first time in months, they ate without devices present." Olivia steered conversation away from TechFusion, asking about his childhood dreams and reminding him of stories from their early days together. Briefly, glimpses of the old Nate emerged, laughing at shared memories, relaxing into conversation that required no strategic purpose. After dessert, Olivia reached for his hand across the table. "I have news." Nate's smile was genuine, if tired. "Good news, I hope." "The best," she said, heart racing. "We're going to have a baby. I'm pregnant." The words hung between them. Olivia had imagined this moment countless times, his joy, shared excitement, perhaps tears. Instead, Nate's expression froze, his fingers tensing against hers. "You're sure?" he asked finally. She nodded. 12 weeks. I saw the doctor yesterday. Everything looks perfect." Nate withdrew his hand slowly, reaching for his water glass. "That's significant news." "It is," she agreed, smile fading at his tepid response. "Are you happy?" He exhaled slowly. "It's just unexpected timing. The company is at a critical growth phase, the expansion into Asia, the government contracts under negotiation. I know your schedule is demanding," Olivia acknowledged. "But this is our child, Nate. Our family." "Family," he repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar concept. "The timing complicates things considerably." Olivia felt cold spreading through her chest. "Complicates? The Morrison acquisition requires my complete focus for the next several quarters. The board expects TechFusion to double market share by year-end." He spoke clinically, as if discussing a business challenge rather than their child. "The timing isn't ideal." "Timing?" Disbelief colored her voice. "This isn't a product launch, Nate. It's our baby." He stood abruptly, pacing toward the window. "I understand that, but you must understand my position. TechFusion stands at a critical juncture. Thousands of employees depend on our continued growth. Investors have expectations." "And what about my expectations?" Olivia asked quietly. "What about our marriage?" Nate turned, his expression shifting to one she recognized from difficult client negotiations. "We should approach this practically. You'll need support. I'll arrange for the best medical care, perhaps a household assistant." "I don't need an assistant," she replied, voice hardening. "I need my husband, my partner." "I am your partner," he countered. "I'm ensuring your material needs are met." Material needs. The disconnect between them had never felt so vast. This baby needs a father who's present, not just financially supportive. Nate checked his watch reflexively. I have a call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. Can we continue this discussion tomorrow? I need time to process. Olivia stared at the stranger wearing her husband's face. The man who had once promised to build a life with her now viewed their child as an inconvenient scheduling conflict. Take all the time you need, she said finally, gathering the untouched dessert plates. You seem to have plenty of it for everything except us. As Nate retreated to his office, Olivia placed protective hands over her stomach. The baby represented hope, but also threw into sharp relief how far they had drifted from the partnership they'd once cherished. The weeks following Olivia's pregnancy announcement brought a chill to their home that had nothing to do with the autumn weather. Nate retreated further into work, his physical presence in their house becoming increasingly rare. Conversations turned transactional, scheduling doctor appointments, discussing household logistics, exchanging information rather than connecting. When Nate mentioned the Monaco conference over breakfast, Olivia initially thought little of it. Business trips were standard, though the timing felt particularly unfortunate. The European Cybersecurity Summit, he explained, not looking up from his tablet. I'll be presenting our expansion strategy to potential investors. How long will you be gone? Olivia asked, stirring her decaffeinated tea. 2 weeks, maybe 3, depending on the response. He glanced up briefly. The Munich and Paris offices need attention as well. Olivia nodded, calculating dates in her head. You'll miss the 18-week ultrasound. A flicker of something crossed his face, regret perhaps, or simply annoyance at the reminder of her condition. I'll have Sandra arrange for the best obstetric care while I'm away. That's not the point, Olivia said quietly. This is when we might learn the baby's gender. Nate's phone chimed with an incoming message. He checked it immediately, already mentally departing the conversation. Have them record it. We can discuss names when I return. The morning of his departure brought no tender goodbye, no lingering embrace. Nate checked his luggage with clinical efficiency, reviewing travel documents while his driver waited outside. The Milano proposal needs your review, he mentioned, handing her a folder. The board meets next Thursday. I know the schedule, Olivia replied, standing in the doorway with one hand resting on her barely visible bump. Safe travels. He nodded, lifting his briefcase. At the door, he paused briefly, eyes dropping to her stomach. For a moment, Olivia thought he might embrace her, might acknowledge the life growing within her. Instead, he simply said, take care of yourself, and was gone. The first week passed predictably. Daily text updates, brief video calls dominated by business discussions. Olivia focused on the Milano proposal, channeling her emotions into productive work rather than dwelling on the growing distance between them. Week 2 brought less frequent communication. Calls went to voicemail. Messages received delayed responses, often in the middle of the night, Monaco time, when Nate claimed to be working late. When week 3 began without mention of his return, Olivia called his executive assistant. Mr. Reed has extended his European visit indefinitely, Sandra informed her with professional detachment. The Paris office situation requires his personal attention. I see, Olivia replied, noting that his own wife received the same information as any business associate. When you speak with him, please remind him about my doctor appointment Thursday. Of course, Mrs. Reed. Thursday came. Olivia attended the ultrasound alone, watching in silence as the technician pointed out tiny hands, perfect feet, the strong beat of a developing heart. Would you like to know the gender? The technician asked. Olivia hesitated, then nodded. Yes, it's a girl, a daughter. Tears welled unexpectedly. She would have a daughter, strong, intelligent, capable, someone who would never define her worth through a man's validation. Nate's absence during this moment crystallized something Olivia had been avoiding acknowledging. He had already left them, in every way that mattered. Week 4 of Nate's business trip began with silence. No calls, no messages. When Olivia attempted to reach him, his assistant intercepted. Mr. Reed is in high-level negotiations. I'll have him contact you when available. On Tuesday morning, the doorbell rang. Olivia opened it to find a courier holding a large manila envelope. Olivia Reed? Delivery from Winthrop, Stern and Associates. Signature required. The law firm's name triggered immediate unease. She signed, closing the door before opening the heavy envelope. Legal documents slid into her hands. Bold text across the top page read, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. Olivia sank onto the entryway bench, papers trembling in her grasp. Pages of legal terminology outlined the end of 8 years together. Nate hadn't even afforded her the dignity of a conversation. No warning, no discussion, just clinical legal proceedings delivered by a stranger. Her phone rang, unknown number.
Mrs. Reed? This is James Winthrop from Winthrop, Stern and Associates. I assume you've received our package.
Olivia's training in high-pressure financial negotiations served her well. Despite the earthquake destroying her personal life, Her voice remained steady. "I have," Mr. Reed hoped for an amicable resolution. "We're prepared to expedite proceedings to minimize disruption." "How considerate," she replied, ice forming around her heart. "And did Mr. Reed mention I'm carrying his child?" A pause. "Mr. Reed informed us of your condition. The settlement takes that into account." "My condition?" she repeated, hand protectively covering her stomach. "I see. If you'd turn to page 12, you'll find the proposed financial arrangements. Mr. Reed is being quite generous, given the prenuptial agreement limitations." Olivia flipped to the indicated page, scanning numbers that represented the monetary value Nate placed on discarding his family. "I'll need time to review this with my own counsel." "Of course. However, Mr. Reed hopes to finalize matters quickly. The company's public image is a consideration. The company, always the company. Even their marriage's dissolution was framed around Tech Fusion's reputation." "I'll have my attorney contact you," Olivia said before hanging up. She sat motionless, divorce papers spread across her lap, sunlight streaming through windows they had chosen together for a home that had never truly become theirs. The magnitude of betrayal crashed over her in waves. Not just the divorce itself, but the calculated coldness of its execution. The following morning, Olivia met with Diana Chen, a divorce attorney known for her effectiveness against high-profile executives. "This settlement is insulting," Diana said, reviewing the documents in her downtown office. "Given Tech Fusion's current valuation and your contributions to its growth, you're entitled to significantly more." Olivia gazed out at the city skyline. "What's the prenup limitation?" "It caps your settlement at $5 million, plus property division as outlined." Diana tapped the document. "But we have grounds to challenge it. Your direct contributions to Tech Fusion, your sacrificed career opportunities, your pregnancy, all strengthen our position." The proposed settlement offered $8 million, technically generous compared to the prenup requirement, but a fraction of what equitable division would provide, given Tech Fusion's billion-dollar valuation. "The catch," Diana continued, "is that accepting this offer requires comprehensive confidentiality. You would be legally prohibited from discussing your role in Tech Fusion's development or the circumstances of your separation." "He wants to erase me," Olivia said quietly. "From the company history, from his life, essentially, yes. And he's willing to pay $3 million above the prenup minimum for that erasure." Olivia considered her options, one hand resting on her growing belly. Money wasn't her primary concern. It was the principle, the disregard for their partnership, the attempt to reduce 8 years to a financial transaction. "What happens if I fight this?" Diana's expression turned serious. "A public battle with someone of Nate Reed's resources would be exhausting, expensive, and potentially damaging for everyone, including your child. He has the means to drag proceedings out indefinitely. And the likely outcome? Potentially more money, but a tremendous personal cost. These fights get ugly, Olivia. Private investigators, character assassination, media scrutiny." Olivia nodded slowly, calculating not just financial implications, but emotional ones. A prolonged legal battle would consume energy better directed toward her child and rebuilding her life. "I need time to consider my options," she said finally. "Of course, but be prepared. Men like Nate Reed aren't accustomed to resistance. Expect pressure tactics." That evening, scrolling through financial news while considering Diana's advice, Olivia's attention caught on a headline: "Tech Fusion secures European expansion. Reed and Shaw partnership promises growth." The accompanying photo showed Nate at a Monaco gala, champagne glass raised in celebration. Beside him stood Veronica Shaw, striking in a red evening gown, her hand resting intimately on his arm. The caption identified her as investment banker Veronica Shaw, instrumental in Tech Fusion's European funding strategy. Olivia enlarged the image, studying the woman who had apparently been Nate's priority during his extended business trip. Tall, elegant, impeccably styled. Everything about her screamed ambition complementing his. Additional photos appeared in the article's gallery. Nate and Veronica entering a restaurant, heads bent in conversation. Emerging from conference rooms, sharing private smiles. The timeline told a story the captions didn't acknowledge. These weren't merely professional interactions. The final image delivered the confirmation Olivia didn't want but needed. Nate and Veronica on a yacht in the Mediterranean, his hand at the small of her back, her lips near his ear. The date stamp showed this intimacy occurring just days after he'd learned of Olivia's pregnancy. The betrayal wasn't merely abandonment, it was replacement. While his child grew within Olivia, Nate had simply substituted one partner for another, upgrading to a model that better suited his current ambitions. "Hey everyone, Mr. Ross here, just checking in. I can see you're feeling what Olivia's feeling right now. That gut punch of betrayal, that moment when you realize someone you trusted completely has been living a double life. If you're connecting with Olivia's journey, hit that like button right now. It helps the algorithm, sure, but more importantly, it tells me you're invested in seeing justice unfold in this remarkable true story. Now, let's get back to Olivia and see how she handles this devastating revelation. The morning after discovering Veronica Shaw's existence, Olivia woke with unexpected clarity. Grief and shock had cleared, replaced by cold determination. She picked up her phone and called Diana Chen. "I've made my decision," she said when the attorney answered. "I'll accept the financial settlement with 2 modifications, which are: first, I want complete independence from the confidentiality clause regarding my daughter. Nate can erase me from Tech Fusion's history, but he cannot prevent me from telling my child the truth about her father. He may resist that," Diana cautioned. "It's non-negotiable. Second, I want the settlement placed in a blind trust that neither of us can access for 15 years, except for specific educational and healthcare expenses for our daughter." Diana's surprise was audible. "That's unusual. Most clients want immediate access to their settlements. I don't want or need his money," Olivia explained. "But I want it secured for our daughter's future. More importantly, I want him to know I'm not being bought off." After a pause, Diana said, "I'll present these terms. What about the house, the other assets?" "He can keep everything except my personal belongings and family heirlooms. I'm starting fresh." Olivia ended the call and placed protective hands over her stomach. "It's just you and me now," she whispered to her unborn daughter. "But that's all we need." She moved through the mansion methodically, gathering only what truly mattered: her grandmother's pearls, her academic credentials, family photographs. The trappings of wealth that had never brought happiness could remain with the man who valued them above family. By evening, 2 suitcases contained her essential life. Everything else, the designer clothes, the luxury items, the symbols of their supposed success, she left behind. As sunset painted the mansion's windows golden, Olivia took one final walk through rooms that had witnessed the slow death of her marriage. Not with sadness, but with growing resolution. The woman who had sacrificed her career for Nate's vision was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, focused not on what she had lost but what she would build. She placed her house keys and wedding ring on the kitchen counter, alongside a note: "I accept the financial terms with amendments my attorney will discuss. The rest means nothing to me now." With one hand cradling her stomach, Olivia walked out the front door without looking back. The cool evening air felt like freedom against her face. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenge, rebuilding, but also possibility, unburdened by a man who had proven himself unworthy of her loyalty. Her daughter would have a mother who refused to be discarded, who transformed betrayal into strength, who built success on her own terms. That was a legacy worth creating. December arrived with biting winds and early darkness. Olivia, now settled in a modest 1-bedroom apartment across town, prepared for her daughter's arrival with methodical precision. The nursery corner contained only essentials: crib, changing table, small dresser filled with carefully selected clothes. No extravagance, only thoughtful necessity. At 38 weeks, contractions began during a snowstorm that blanketed the city in white silence. Olivia called her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, an elderly retired nurse who had become her unexpected ally. "It's time," Olivia said calmly. "Could you drive me to Memorial Hospital?" The journey through snow-covered streets took 3 times longer than normal. Contractions intensified with each passing mile. Mrs. Chen spoke soothingly in her accented English, sharing wisdom from decades of maternity nursing. "Breathe through pain. Pain brings your daughter, each contraction one step closer." The hospital glowed like a beacon in the winter darkness. Olivia was admitted immediately, her composed demeanor impressing the intake nurse who'd expected panic from a first-time mother arriving alone. "Is the father on his way?" the nurse asked, preparing monitoring equipment. "No," Olivia replied simply. "It's just me." Labor progressed through the night. Without birth classes or preparation beyond books she'd studied, Olivia faced each contraction with the same determination that had carried her through the divorce. Pain was simply information, intense but purposeful. She focused on breathing, on progress, on the life about to join hers. At 5:47 a.m., as dawn lightened the December sky, Isabella Parker Hayes announced her arrival with a powerful cry that echoed through the delivery room. The doctor placed the red-faced, dark-haired infant on Olivia's chest. "Hello, Isabella," Olivia whispered, tears flowing freely for the first time since receiving divorce papers. "I've been waiting for you." The newborn's eyes, alert, dark, intelligent, found her mother's face. Recognition seemed to pass between them, an understanding that transcended words. They belonged to each other completely. Later, when a nurse brought discharge paperwork, she hesitated at the father's information section. "Leave it blank," Olivia instructed quietly. "The birth certificate will show my daughter's name, Isabella Marie Parker Hayes. No father listed." The nurse nodded without judgment. "You have someone to help at home?" Olivia looked down at Isabella, sleeping peacefully in her arms. "We have each other. That's enough." Snow fell gently outside the hospital window as Olivia prepared to take her daughter home. No flowers had arrived, no congratulatory calls from the man who had provided half of Isabella's genetic material. Yet the room felt full, with possibility, with love, with the fierce determination of a woman who had discovered her greatest strength in what should have been her moment of greatest vulnerability. 3 months after Isabella's birth, Olivia enrolled in evening MBA classes at the city university. The decision raised eyebrows among advisors who suggested waiting until her child was older. "Financial markets won't wait," Olivia replied, bouncing Isabella gently as they discussed her course schedule. "Neither will we." Their routine became a masterclass in efficiency. Mornings found Olivia completing assignments while Isabella napped. Afternoons included developmental activities Olivia researched meticulously: black and white flashcards, classical music, reading simple books to a baby who seemed to absorb every word. Mrs. Chen became their essential support, watching Isabella during evening classes. The arrangement benefited both women. The elderly neighbor gained purpose after her husband's death, while Olivia gained a surrogate grandmother for her daughter. "She has your determination," Mrs. Chen observed, watching Isabella persistently reaching for toys just beyond her grasp. "Never gives up." Study sessions transformed into creative adaptations. Olivia recorded herself reading textbook chapters, playing the audio while nursing. She attended group projects with Isabella in a front carrier, the baby sleeping contentedly against her chest while graduate students debated investment strategies. Professor Morgan, teaching advanced financial analysis, initially frowned at the infant's presence. His skepticism dissolved when Olivia consistently submitted exceptional work while managing motherhood without complaint. "Most students with far fewer responsibilities produce far less impressive analysis," he noted, returning her midterm with the highest grade in class. Classmates marveled at her composure. "How do you do it all?" a fellow student asked after watching Olivia complete a presentation while soothing a fussy Isabella. "I don't see them as separate challenges," Olivia explained. "This is simply our life, Isabella and I learning together." She studied with Isabella sleeping beside her textbooks, tiny fingers sometimes reaching for calculator buttons or highlighting pens. During late-night feedings, Olivia reviewed flashcards, whispering financial concepts like lullabies. The university graduation ceremony fell on Isabella's first birthday. As Olivia crossed the stage to receive her MBA with highest honors, a jubilant squeal erupted from the audience. Isabella, perched on Mrs. Chen's lap, recognized her mother in the unfamiliar cap and gown. Olivia paused, breaking protocol to wave at her daughter. The audience chuckled, then applauded the young mother's achievement. Later, professional photographers captured Olivia in academic regalia, Isabella propped on her hip, the diploma held between them, a shared accomplishment. No one in the audience knew that inside Olivia's graduation gown pocket rested a folded newspaper clipping announcing Nate Reed's selection as Entrepreneur of the Year. The timing struck her as perfectly symbolic. While he collected accolades, she collected something infinitely more valuable, the foundation for her daughter's future. The grace Olivia displayed in public masked private struggles that defined single motherhood. Nights when Isabella's teething pain left both exhausted. Mornings when childcare fell through, forcing interview cancellations. The constant mathematical calculations of limited resources, time, energy, money, stretched across competing needs. "Mama, up," Isabella demanded, at precisely the moment Olivia needed to complete a critical job application. "5 minutes, sweetheart," Olivia promised, typing furiously to meet the deadline. Isabella's wails escalated, little arms reaching desperately. The application remained unfinished as Olivia abandoned the computer to comfort her daughter, swallowing frustration even as she whispered reassurances. Financial pressures mounted despite careful budgeting. The settlement trust remained untouchable except for Isabella's education and health care, leaving daily expenses to Olivia's modest savings and part-time consulting work. When Isabella developed an ear infection requiring expensive antibiotics not fully covered by insurance, Olivia sold her grandmother's pearl earrings, one of the few valuable items she'd taken from her marriage. The sacrifice stung, yet felt insignificant compared to her daughter's needs. Social isolation proved an unexpected challenge. Former friends from her married life, mostly couples connected to tech fusion, disappeared after the divorce. Invitations ceased, calls went unreturned, The corporate wives who had once sought her advice now avoided her as if divorce might be contagious. New connections proved difficult to forge. Mothers' groups were scheduled during work hours. Career networking events conflicted with bedtime routines. Dating seemed an impossible luxury of time and emotional energy she couldn't spare. "Don't you get lonely?" Mrs. Chen asked one evening, observing Olivia reading financial journals after Isabella's bedtime. "Sometimes," Olivia admitted. "But loneliness is preferable to compromising what matters most." The questions began when Isabella turned 3, innocent yet piercing inquiries about the father-shaped void in their lives. "Where's my daddy?" she asked after preschool, where Father's Day crafts had highlighted her difference. Olivia had prepared for this inevitable moment. "Your father lives far away, focused on his work. Some children have 2 parents, some have 1. You have me and I have you. But Zach has a daddy who plays trucks." "Everyone's family looks different," Olivia explained, heart aching at her daughter's confusion. "Ours is special because we're a strong team of 2. Later that night, after Isabella slept, Olivia allowed herself rare tears, not for the marriage she'd lost, but for the questions she couldn't fully answer, the absence she couldn't completely fill, no matter how completely she devoted herself to being both parents. While Olivia navigated motherhood's challenges, Nate Reed ascended to technology royalty status. Tech Fusion expanded aggressively, acquiring competitors and diversifying into adjacent security markets. Industry publications featured his confident smile on covers, praising his visionary leadership and relentless innovation. The Monaco relationship with Veronica Shaw lasted 18 months, long enough to secure European expansion financing, short enough to avoid serious commitment. She was replaced by Alessandra, a Brazilian marketing executive, who lasted 8 months before Nate moved on to Diane, a venture capitalist whose connections proved useful until they too parted ways. His dating pattern became predictable to industry observers. Attractive, accomplished women who complimented his professional image, discarded when they sought deeper connection or questioned his work obsession. None lasted beyond the honeymoon phase, when his true priorities emerged. Tech Fusion's headquarters expanded to a gleaming 50-story tower downtown, Nate's office occupying the top floor with panoramic city views. His calendar filled with international speaking engagements, White House technology councils, exclusive leadership retreats. Private jets, luxury hotels, and VIP treatment became standard expectations. Yet subtle signs of emptiness appeared in unguarded moments. At a technology conference in Tokyo, a journalist asked about work-life balance. "Success requires sacrifice," Nate answered automatically, then paused. "Though sometimes I wonder what I've sacrificed for it." The rare moment of reflection made headlines briefly before being overshadowed by Tech Fusion's next product announcement. His homes multiplied: Manhattan Penthouse, Aspen Retreat, Malibu Beachfront, each professionally designed, perfectly maintained, and fundamentally empty. Staff managed these properties, ensuring fresh flowers appeared, and refrigerators remained stocked for the owner who rarely stayed longer than a few nights. Late evenings found Nate alone in whichever property currently housed him, reviewing reports, answering emails, planning strategy, productive but isolated. Dinner invitations came constantly from people seeking his influence, investment, or approval. Genuine friendships had gradually disappeared, replaced by transactional relationships serving mutual interests. On his 45th birthday, Tech Fusion's board presented Nate with an exclusive watch worth more than most employees' annual salaries. He accepted with practiced gratitude, added it to his collection, and returned to work without celebration. No one present knew or remembered it was also Isabella's 5th birthday, a connection Nate himself had buried so deeply he no longer consciously acknowledged the date's dual significance. Olivia's entry-level position at Marshall Financial came through Professor Morgan's recommendation. The boutique investment firm specialized in tech sector analysis, familiar territory that utilized her Tech Fusion experience without requiring direct disclosure of her connection to its CEO. "We need someone who understands technology from both business and technical perspectives," explained Richard Marshall during her interview. "Your analysis of emerging security markets is impressively thorough." The salary barely covered childcare and basic expenses, but offered critical professional legitimacy after years absent from the traditional workforce. More importantly, it provided flexible hours, allowing Olivia to drop Isabella at kindergarten before work and pick her up afterward. Her cubicle displayed a single photograph, Isabella on her 5th birthday, gap-toothed smile beaming beneath a party hat. No personal items referenced Olivia's previous life as Mrs. Reed, no hints of the wealth she had walked away from. Colleagues knew her only as the quiet analyst with exceptional insight into technology investment opportunities. Parker Hayes spotted SecureNet's potential before anyone, Richard noted during a staff meeting. highlighting Olivia's analysis that had led to a profitable early investment. Their acquisition announcement yesterday doubled our position value. What colleagues didn't know was that Olivia recognized SecureNet's promise because it addressed security vulnerabilities she had identified in TechFusion's products years earlier, weaknesses Nate had dismissed as theoretical concerns not worth development resources. Her reputation for identifying promising startups grew steadily. Richard began assigning her to client meetings where her clear explanations of complex technology translated into investment confidence. After hours, she studied emerging trends, teaching herself programming languages to better evaluate technical claims made by potential investments. "You understand this sector at a depth I rarely see," Richard commented after she correctly predicted 3 major security technology shifts. "What's your background in tech?" "I learned by necessity," Olivia replied carefully. Understanding the fundamentals seemed essential to making sound investments. Her first significant bonus came after identifying a pattern of promising security startups founded by former TechFusion employees, companies addressing gaps in their previous employer's product line. The resulting investments yielded exceptional returns for Marshall Financial. Rather than spending the bonus on luxuries, Olivia opened Isabella's first investment account. "Money working for you creates options," she explained to her curious 6-year-old. "Options create freedom." As Isabella watched, Olivia made their first investment together, a modest position in an educational technology company they had researched as a weekend game. The ritual would continue throughout Isabella's childhood, building both financial literacy and a steadily growing portfolio. Olivia's 8th year at Marshall Financial brought a crucial turning point. Richard called her into his office unexpectedly one Thursday afternoon. "Cleanstream Security is going public tomorrow," he announced. "Your analysis positioned us perfectly. The partners have decided your insight deserves recognition beyond salary." He slid a document across his desk, profit-sharing details that would transform Olivia's financial situation completely. The IPO shares allocated to her would generate more capital than her entire Marshall Financial career earnings combined. "Thank you for your confidence," she said, maintaining professional composure despite internal celebration. "This means more than you know." That evening, after Isabella completed homework, Olivia shared her news. "We're going to make a significant change, sweetheart. I'm going to start my own company." "Like becoming the boss?" Isabella asked, now 10 and keenly interested in her mother's work. "Exactly like that. And I need a name that represents what we'll do, finding new horizons for investment." Isabella considered this thoughtfully. "Horizon Investments," she suggested, "because you see further than other people." 3 months later, Horizon Investments opened in a small office suite downtown. The modest space featured simple furnishings, powerful computers, and a corner desk for Isabella's after-school homework. The firm began with 2 employees, Olivia and a recent finance graduate named Marcus, who shared her interest in ethical technology investments. "Our differentiation is simple," Olivia explained to their first potential client. "We invest exclusively in technology companies demonstrating both innovation and ethical frameworks. Long-term sustainability requires both." This philosophy emerged directly from her TechFusion experience, witnessing how prioritizing growth over ethics eventually created vulnerabilities. Horizon would make different choices, valuing responsibility alongside profitability. Their first year brought modest success, targeting investors concerned with technology ethics. By year 3, Horizon's performance metrics attracted broader attention, their carefully selected portfolio consistently outperforming conventional tech investment approaches. "Your ethical screening doesn't limit returns, it enhances them," noted a prominent client. "How did you develop this approach?" "Experience," Olivia replied simply. "I've seen what happens when companies prioritize growth at any cost." Behind the scenes, Olivia implemented a long-term strategy invisible to clients and competitors alike. While building Horizon's legitimate investment business, she systematically accumulated small positions in TechFusion through anonymous holding companies and diversified funds. Each purchased too minor to trigger reporting requirements together, forming a gradually increasing ownership stake. Each acquisition represented calculated patience rather than emotional revenge. TechFusion remained objectively valuable despite its ethical shortcomings, and Olivia understood its vulnerabilities better than anyone. Her knowledge would eventually serve both Horizon's investors and a more personal reckoning that was still years from fruition. As Horizon Investments grew, so did Isabella, developing her mother's analytical mind alongside a moral compass Nate Reed had never possessed. Neither knew their parallel journey was steadily converging toward an inevitable intersection with the man who had abandoned them, who remained unaware of the formidable forces his choices had created. By 12, Isabella Parker Hayes displayed intellectual gifts that surpassed even Olivia's expectations. While classmates struggled with basic algebra, Isabella explored calculus concepts with natural intuition. Her bedroom bookshelf contained advanced texts on mathematics, computer science, and economics, many annotated in her precise handwriting. "Mom, I found something interesting," Isabella announced one evening, laptop perched on their kitchen counter as Olivia prepared dinner. "TechFusion's new security protocol has a fundamental design flaw." Olivia paused, knife hovering over vegetables. "Explain." Isabella turned her screen, displaying code she'd analyzed from TechFusion's developer documentation. "They're using symmetric encryption for distributed authentication. It creates vulnerability when scaled across multiple server environments." Studying the screen, Olivia recognized the architectural approach, one she had cautioned against years earlier when Nate prioritized speed to market over security integrity. "Interesting observation. How would you solve it?" Without hesitation, Isabella outlined an alternative approach combining asymmetric protocols with blockchain verification, a solution more elegant than anything TechFusion's engineers had implemented. Olivia nodded thoughtfully. "That's genuinely innovative. Have you considered submitting it to their bug bounty program?" "I did," Isabella replied with a slight frown. They responded that it's a theoretical concern without practical exploitation risk. The phrase, identical to Nate's dismissal of Olivia's concerns years earlier, sent a chill through her, history repeating itself through their daughter, though Isabella remained unaware of the connection. Beyond technical brilliance, Isabella developed remarkable emotional intelligence. While inheriting Nate's analytical precision, she possessed empathy he had always lacked. This combination manifested in her high school technology ethics project, designing an algorithm that detected bias in automated decision systems. "Why focus on bias detection?" her computer science teacher asked during presentation reviews. "Because technology shapes human opportunities," Isabella explained. "Unchecked bias in algorithms perpetuates inequality. Engineers have responsibility to prevent harm, not just create capabilities." The project won national recognition, attracting university recruiters' attention. At 16, Isabella began receiving early outreach from prestigious computer science programs. MIT, Carnegie Mellon, and Stanford expressed interest in the young woman whose technical skills came paired with ethical frameworks unusual in teenage prodigies. Throughout these developments, Olivia maintained their agreement never to discuss Nate Reed directly. Isabella knew only the essential facts. Her father had chosen career over family before her birth. The details, TechFusion, the divorce circumstances, Veronica Shaw, remained unmentioned. This selective silence became increasingly difficult as Isabella's interests aligned more closely with her father's industry. When TechFusion's CEO appeared on technology magazine covers, Olivia discreetly removed them from their home. When industry conferences featured Nate as keynote speaker, Olivia suggested alternative events for Isabella to attend. The precautions proved insufficient when Isabella's advanced computing class assigned a case study on TechFusion's security innovation timeline. "Did you know about this assignment?" Isabella asked, bringing the worksheet home. Olivia maintained her composure. "I hadn't seen it. What does it involve?" "Analyzing how TechFusion revolutionized security approaches." Isabella studied her mother's expression. "You look uncomfortable. Is something wrong?" Just surprised by the focus on a single company rather than industry-wide innovation, Olivia deflected smoothly. "Perhaps suggest comparing multiple security pioneers for more balanced analysis?" Isabella accepted this reasonable critique, modifying her assignment approach. The moment passed without revelation, but Olivia recognized their carefully maintained separation from Nate Reed's world was becoming increasingly unsustainable as Isabella's talents drew her toward the very industry her father dominated. The Stanford acceptance package arrived during Isabella's final high school semester. Thick envelope, cardinal red border, promising before even being opened. "It's here," Isabella called, voice trembling with uncharacteristic nervousness. Olivia joined her at the kitchen table, heart racing with anticipation. Together, they broke the seal and unfolded the contents. "Dear Isabella Parker Hayes, we are pleased to offer you admission to Stanford University's computer science program with a full presidential scholarship." Their celebration filled their apartment, jumping, laughing, reading passages aloud. The full scholarship represented more than financial support. It validated Isabella's exceptional abilities independent of any family connection or privilege. "There's more," Isabella said, extracting a personal letter from the department chair. "Your research proposal on ethical algorithm design particularly impressed our faculty. We believe your approach to integrating moral frameworks with technical innovation represents the future direction of computer science. The letter continued with specifics, mentioning Isabella's theory of transparent algorithm accountability and inviting her to join an advanced research lab typically reserved for graduate students. They understand what matters, Isabella whispered. Not just building technology, but building it responsibly. Later that evening, as excitement settled into planning, Isabella raised unexpected questions. Mom, I've been thinking about something. Stanford's proximity to Silicon Valley means potential internships at major tech companies. Olivia nodded cautiously. Many opportunities, certainly, including Tech Fusion. Isabella watched her mother carefully. Their headquarters are 20 minutes from campus. The moment Olivia had long anticipated had arrived. That's true. If I applied there, I might encounter him, my father. Isabella spoke matter-of-factly, though her fingers fidgeted with her acceptance letter. Would that bother you? Olivia chose her words carefully. Your education and opportunities must come first. If Tech Fusion offers valuable experience, you shouldn't avoid it because of past history. Would you tell me more about him, before I potentially meet him through professional channels? The request hung between them, reasonable yet complicated. Olivia had always promised herself she would answer honestly when Isabella asked directly. I'll share what's relevant, Olivia agreed. But first, I need you to understand something important. Your achievements, this Stanford acceptance, your brilliant mind, your ethical perspective, those are yours, not his, not mine. Yours alone. Isabella nodded, absorbing this foundation before any revelations could shake it. His name is Nate Reed. He's brilliant, driven, and single-minded in pursuit of his goals. Those qualities built Tech Fusion's success and ended our marriage when priorities conflicted. Olivia paused. He made his choice 20 years ago. Whatever happens now is entirely up to you. Isabella considered this. Does he know about me, my accomplishments? No, Olivia answered simply. He chose complete separation. I've respected that choice. The conversation continued late into the night. Olivia sharing carefully measured facts without bitterness. Isabella processing the reality of the father who existed beyond abstract absence. By morning, decisions crystallized. Isabella would attend Stanford, would not avoid Tech Fusion opportunities if they arose, but would approach any potential encounter from position of strength rather than seeking connection. I'm curious, not desperate for approval, she concluded. Knowledge is simply better than uncertainty. Olivia recognized her daughter's composed rationality, a trait inherited from both parents but refined through Isabella's unique wisdom. Whatever came next, Isabella was prepared to face it on her own terms. As Isabella prepared for Stanford, Horizon Investments entered its most successful phase. Olivia's reputation for identifying promising ethical technology attracted significant capital, allowing expansion to larger offices and a team of 12 specialized analysts. Their investment approach remained consistent, thorough technical evaluation combined with ethical assessment. While competitors chased trendy startups regardless of sustainability, Horizon maintained disciplined focus on companies demonstrating both innovation and responsibility. Your ethical screening identified problems at ClearPass before their security breach became public, noted a prominent client after ClearPass stock plummeted following disclosure of customer data mishandling. How did you spot concerns that escaped regulatory attention? We evaluate corporate culture alongside technology, Olivia explained. Pressure for growth often undermines security priorities. The signs were visible in their development practices. This insight came directly from her Tech Fusion experience, watching how Nate's ambition gradually eroded ethical guardrails. Olivia had transformed that painful lesson into Horizon's competitive advantage. Behind her growing public success, Olivia implemented a private strategy developed over years of patient planning. Horizon's official investment portfolio contained carefully selected technology companies, legitimately promising opportunities providing excellent client returns. Unofficially, through separate holding companies and anonymous investment vehicles, Olivia systematically acquired Tech Fusion stock whenever market fluctuations created favorable entry points. These acquisitions remained below reporting thresholds individually, while collectively building substantial ownership. The strategy required patience and discipline, qualities Olivia had mastered through necessity. By the time Isabella received her Stanford acceptance, these carefully accumulated shares approached 15% of Tech Fusion's outstanding stock. The position represented more than financial investment. It created leverage Olivia might eventually need. Tech Fusion remained industry dominant but had developed vulnerabilities under Nate's leadership, prioritizing expansion over innovation, accumulating technical debt while pursuing market share. Weaknesses Olivia recognized because she had warned against their causes years earlier. Her motivation wasn't revenge but protection. Isabella's brilliance inevitably drawing her toward technology careers meant potential intersection with her father's company. Olivia's strategy ensured that when that intersection occurred, Isabella would be protected by her mother's carefully constructed influence. Olivia's final acquisition phase accelerated as Isabella prepared for Stanford. Market conditions created perfect opportunity. TechFusion stock temporarily depressed following a quarterly earnings miss. Financial analysts recommended hold, while Olivia quietly executed her largest purchase yet through 7 separate entities. This transaction pushed her cumulative ownership to precisely 15%, significant enough to demand attention without triggering hostile takeover concerns. The position granted specific rights, board representation, information access, policy influence. Tools Olivia had no immediate intention of using, but carefully preserved for future necessity. The acquisition's timing aligned with Isabella's Stanford departure, ensuring that when mother and daughter separated physically, Olivia's protective strategy reached completion. Whatever challenges emerged from Isabella's proximity to TechFusion, Olivia had positioned herself to respond from strength rather than vulnerability. I know you're feeling something powerful right now watching Olivia's brilliant long-game strategy unfold. This isn't just about revenge. It's about a mother protecting her child and finally claiming her rightful place in the company she helped build. Drop a comment telling me what you think Nate's reaction will be when he discovers who's been quietly buying TechFusion stock all these years. Will he be angry? Terrified? Maybe even impressed? I'm reading every comment, and your insights might just predict where this incredible true story goes next. Now, let's get back to what happens when these parallel lives finally collide. The annual Innovation Excellence Awards transformed the Grand Hyatt Ballroom into a showcase of technology's elite. Crystal chandeliers illuminated tables where industry pioneers exchanged insights between courses of overpriced cuisine. At the center of it all stood an illuminated stage where, for 20 years, visionaries had received recognition for transforming digital landscapes. Olivia Parker Hayes had never attended despite numerous invitations. Horizon Investments' growing prominence in technology financing had placed her on guest lists, but she had always delegated representation to colleagues. This year proved different. Horizon should have visibility at premier industry events, she explained to her executive team. I'll attend personally. The real motivation remained unspoken. TechFusion's CEO would be receiving his 5th Innovator of the Year award. As Horizon's significant TechFusion ownership position prepared to shift from passive investment to active influence, Olivia needed first-hand assessment of the man Nate Reed had become. She selected her attire strategically, a tailored midnight blue suit projecting authority without ostentation. No flashy jewelry, just her grandmother's modest pearl earrings. Her appearance would convey successful professionalism without inviting particular attention. From her deliberately selected table near the back, Olivia observed the room's power dynamics. Venture capitalists clustered together, evaluating potential investments. Engineers celebrated technical achievements among peers who understood their significance. Corporate executives engaged in careful conversation, competitive beneath collegial surfaces, and now, announced the Master of Ceremonies, the Lifetime Achievement Award for Innovation Excellence. This honor recognizes not just technical brilliance, but transformative impact on our industry. Please welcome TechFusion founder and CEO, Nate Reed. Applause erupted as Nate approached the podium. At 45, he remained physically impressive, silver threading his dark hair in a way that enhanced rather than diminished his appearance. His confident stride communicated authority earned through 2 decades of industry leadership. Olivia studied him objectively, noting differences 20 years had wrought. Lines around his eyes suggested constant pressure. His smile appeared practiced rather than genuine. Success had hardened him in ways visible even from a distance. Innovation isn't just about technology, Nate told the attentive audience. It's about vision, seeing possibilities others miss. At TechFusion, we've consistently anticipated security challenges before they emerged, protecting our clients through forward-thinking solutions. The irony wasn't lost on Olivia. His current rhetoric echoed warnings she had raised during their marriage, concerns he had dismissed as excessive caution. The visionary perspective he now claimed had originally been their shared approach, abandoned when growth became his singular focus. As he concluded with practiced humility, accepting his crystal trophy to standing ovation, his gaze swept the ballroom. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met across the crowded space. Recognition flickered briefly across his features before disappearing behind professional composure. The moment passed quickly. Nate continued acknowledging applause, proceeding to photo opportunities with industry luminaries. Yet Olivia had seen his momentary hesitation, confirming he remembered her instantly despite the passing years. First contact established, exactly as she had planned. The post-ceremony reception filled with networking intensity disguised as casual conversation. Executives circulated strategically, measuring each interaction's potential value. Olivia accepted a sparkling water from a passing server, positioning herself near the exit, visible but not immediately accessible. Across the room, Nate held court among admirers, trophy placed on a nearby table while he accepted congratulations. His attention appeared fully engaged with each conversation partner, yet Olivia noted his occasional glances toward her position. Recognition had disrupted his evening, exactly as anticipated. "Miss Hayes." A man in an impeccable suit approached, extending his hand. "William Chen, Tech Fusion's chief financial officer. I don't believe we've met formally." "Olivia Parker Hayes," she confirmed, accepting his handshake. "Horizon Investments." Understanding dawned in his expression. "Our mysterious 15% shareholder. Your investment team has accumulated quite a position over recent years." "Strategic patience is one of our core principles," Olivia replied. "The board has been curious about Horizon's intentions. Your firm rarely takes such significant positions without seeking active involvement." "Every investment has its proper timing," she said, maintaining professional neutrality. "We've been content as passive participants until recently." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Fascinating. Would you mind if I introduced you to our CEO? He'd be particularly interested in meeting Horizon's founder, especially given your substantial ownership stake." "That seems appropriate," Olivia agreed. As Chen guided her through the crowd, she observed Nate tracking their approach. His expression shifted subtly, professional interest giving way to growing discomfort as he recognized Chen's companion. 20 years of practiced executive control couldn't fully mask his reaction to seeing his ex-wife approaching as a significant shareholder in his company. "Nate, may I introduce Olivia Parker Hayes? She's the founder and CEO of Horizon Investments." "We've met," Nate replied, voice carefully modulated. "Though it's been some time." Chen's eyebrows raised slightly. "I wasn't aware you knew each other." "Ancient history," Olivia offered smoothly. "Congratulations on your award, Mr. Reed. Well-deserved recognition." "Thank you." Nate's gaze held hers, searching for explanations she deliberately withheld. "William, would you mind giving Miss Hayes and me a moment? I believe we have some catching up to do." As Chen discreetly withdrew, the carefully constructed reality Nate had maintained for 20 years began its inevitable collapse. "Horizon Investments." Nate spoke the name quietly once they stood relatively isolated near tall windows overlooking city lights. "You're our anonymous 15% shareholder." "Not anonymous," Olivia corrected calmly, simply patient. He studied her with the analytical intensity that had once attracted her, his mind visibly processing implications, calculating potential motives, evaluating threats. "Why?" he asked finally. "Professional interest. Tech Fusion represents significant value despite certain structural vulnerabilities." "Vulnerabilities?" His expression hardened. "We've maintained industry leadership for 15 years. Through acquisition rather than innovation recently," Olivia noted. "Your core security architecture hasn't evolved substantially since Pattern Shield. Meanwhile, 3 promising competitors have emerged with more adaptive approaches." His eyes narrowed at her precise assessment. "You've studied us thoroughly. I understand technology's security markets. It's Horizon's specialty. 20 years of separation crystallized between them, not as former spouses, but as business entities with opposing perspectives." The personal history remained deliberately unmentioned, though it colored every carefully chosen word. "What do you want, Olivia?" Nate asked directly. "Currently, nothing beyond appropriate return on investment. Horizon's position remains passive for now." "For now," he repeated, recognizing the implicit threat. "This seems an extraordinarily complicated approach to, what exactly? Revenge?" Olivia's slight smile conveyed genuine amusement. "That would be remarkably short-sighted. Horizon makes investment decisions based on opportunity, not emotion. Yet you've never previously attempted contact despite accumulating significant ownership. Our investment thesis didn't require direct engagement until recently." "What changed?" Nate pressed. Olivia glanced at her watch. "I have another commitment this evening. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in a more appropriate setting. The quarterly board meeting next month would provide suitable context for discussing Horizon's perspective on Tech Fusion's strategic direction." His expression revealed momentary confusion, the conversation ending before he'd extracted her true purpose. "You're planning to attend personally?" "As Horizon's representative, yes. 15% ownership merits direct involvement." The implications registered visibly. Board meetings would require ongoing interaction with the woman he had deliberately excised from his life and company history. Whatever clean separation he had maintained for 20 years had just collapsed. "Good evening, Nate, and again congratulations on your recognition." Olivia extended her hand professionally, a gesture impossible to refuse without attracting attention. He accepted briefly, his grip revealing tension his expression concealed. "This conversation isn't finished." "Of course not," she agreed pleasantly. "It's only beginning." Nate Reed maintained perfect composure as Olivia departed, exchanging appropriate pleasantries with approaching executives. Only after ensuring no observers remained did he retreat to the emptied VIP room, instructing security to ensure privacy. The Crystal Award sat forgotten on a side table as he poured himself scotch with unsteady hands. 20 years of carefully constructed reality had shattered in minutes. Olivia, his ex-wife, his abandoned past, had materialized not as a ghost, but as a power player controlling significant portions of his company. How had this happened without his knowledge? TechFusion's security monitored all substantial stock acquisitions, yet somehow Olivia had accumulated 15% ownership while remaining undetected. The strategic sophistication required exceeded anything he had believed her capable of, revealing how thoroughly he had underestimated her. More disturbingly, her assessment of TechFusion's technological stagnation hit uncomfortably close to truth. The company had indeed prioritized market acquisition over innovation recently, falling back on their established reputation rather than maintaining technical leadership. That she recognized these vulnerabilities suggested detailed analysis beyond public information. His phone chimed with a calendar alert, Isabella's birthday, the automated reminder he always ignored, set up years ago during a moment of uncharacteristic reflection. His daughter would be 20 now, the child he had never met, never acknowledged beyond financial obligations. Olivia's reappearance forced uncomfortable questions he had long suppressed. Had she mentioned their daughter? No, business had remained their only reference point. Would family history emerge during board interactions? The possibility created vulnerability he hadn't anticipated. Nate drained his scotch, irritated by his own reaction. He had faced countless business challenges without emotional disruption, yet 5 minutes with Olivia had shaken his legendary composure. The carefully compartmentalized past had suddenly reopened, demanding acknowledgement he had avoided for decades. "Sir?" His head of security appeared at the doorway. "Your car is ready whenever you'd like to depart. Schedule an emergency meeting with legal tomorrow morning," Nate instructed. "Full shareholder analysis. I want to know everything about Horizon Investments' corporate structure, funding sources, acquisition timeline." "Yes, sir. Anything else?" Nate hesitated, then added, "Have communications prepare contingency strategies for potential board dynamics changes," discreetly. After the security had departed, Nate remained motionless, staring at city lights through tinted windows. The perfectly ordered world he had built after leaving Olivia now contained an unpredictable element. The woman whose heart he had broken, whose contribution to TechFusion he had erased, whose child he had abandoned. And somehow, she had gained legitimate power within the very company he had once used to justify discarding her. Whatever game Olivia was playing, Nate recognized her first move demonstrated patience and strategic, thinking he had never credited her with possessing. The realization left him deeply unsettled. Inside her car, Olivia finally allowed herself a deep breath. The encounter had proceeded almost exactly as anticipated, Nate's initial shock giving way to analytical assessment, his questions revealing more about his concerns than her answers disclosed about her intentions. She had prepared meticulously for this meeting, analyzing public appearances to understand how Nate had evolved. His reliance on practiced charm, his reflexive control tactics, his instinct to establish dominance through questioning all, had emerged predictably. 2 decades running TechFusion had refined rather than fundamentally changed his approach. More revealing were his blind spots. He had automatically assumed emotional motivation, revenge rather than strategic purpose. This dismissive assessment of her capabilities represented the same underestimation that had allowed her to accumulate TechFusion shares undetected. Nate still viewed her through outdated perspectives, failing to recognize the formidable opponent she had become. Her driver navigated evening traffic, while Olivia reviewed mental notes. Nate's reaction confirmed her assessment of TechFusion's internal awareness. They had indeed missed their own technological stagnation, precisely as Horizon's analysis had suggested. This vulnerability would provide leverage during upcoming board discussions. More importantly, Nate had asked no questions about Isabella. Whether from guilt, indifference, or strategic calculation, he had avoided any mention of their daughter. This omission simplified immediate dynamics while confirming his continued emotional disconnection. Olivia's phone chimed with a message from Isabella, Orientation complete. Stanford exceeds expectations. Meeting with ethics computing professor tomorrow. Miss you already. The contrast between Nate's wealth without attachment and Isabella's brilliance with values reaffirmed Olivia's conviction. The upcoming board confrontation wasn't about punishing Nate for past betrayal, but about establishing protection for Isabella's future. Tech Fusion represented both opportunity and threat as her daughter entered the technology field, requiring Olivia's influence to ensure Isabella's inevitable industry entry occurred on favorable terms. "We're approaching Horizon offices, Miss Hayes," her driver announced. "Thank you, James. Please take me home instead. Tomorrow will require full attention." As the car changed direction, Olivia allowed herself a rare moment of professional satisfaction. 20 years of disciplined planning had positioned her perfectly for the next phase. While Nate scrambled to understand her presence, she had already prepared 3 moves ahead. The board meeting would demonstrate the full extent of her preparation and the true purpose behind Horizon's carefully constructed position in the company Nate had once used as justification for abandoning his family. Tech Fusion's quarterly board meeting began with customary formality. 12 members settled into ergonomic chairs surrounding the mahogany table, reviewing agenda items on secured tablets. Conversations hushed as Nate Reed entered, flanked by the company's chief legal officer and CFO William Chen. "Good morning," Nate greeted, taking his position at the head of the table. His expression revealed nothing of the extensive preparations undertaken since the awards ceremony. 3 weeks of intensive investigation had yielded frustratingly limited insights into Horizon Investments' Tech Fusion acquisition strategy. "Before we proceed with regular business," Board Chairman Douglas Henderson announced, "we have an addition to today's agenda. As you've been notified, Horizon Investments has requested formal representation based on their 15% ownership position. The bylaws clearly establish their right to such representation." Subtle shifts in posture indicated board members' varying reactions. Most had learned of Horizon's substantial position only days earlier through a mandatory disclosure filing. "For those who haven't had the pleasure," Henderson continued, "I'd like to introduce Olivia Parker Hayes, founder and CEO of Horizon Investments, who will be representing their interests going forward." The boardroom door opened precisely on cue. Olivia entered with measured confidence, carrying a slim portfolio. Her charcoal suit projected professional authority, while her calm demeanor suggested complete comfort in this rarefied environment. "Thank you, Chairman Henderson," she acknowledged, taking the empty seat positioned directly across from Nate. "Horizon appreciates the opportunity to participate more actively in Tech Fusion's governance." The careful phrasing, "more actively," caused several board members to exchange glances. How long had Horizon been a passive influence they'd failed to recognize? "Ms. Hayes has requested time to address certain strategic concerns," Henderson explained. "As a significant shareholder, this courtesy seems appropriate." Nate maintained perfect composure, though those who knew him best noted his unusually tight grip on his stylus. The woman he had systematically erased from Tech Fusion's origin story now sat among its power brokers, preparing to address the very board he had carefully cultivated for complete loyalty. "Please proceed, Ms. Hayes," Henderson directed. Olivia opened her portfolio, distributing documents to each board member. These materials outline Horizon's analysis of Tech Fusion's current market position, with particular focus on emerging vulnerabilities in the company's ethical frameworks and sustainability practices. Was set for confrontation 2 decades in the making. Tech Fusion built its reputation on revolutionary security innovation, Olivia began, activating the room's presentation system with practiced ease. Pattern Shield fundamentally transformed how enterprises approach data protection, a remarkable achievement deserving of industry recognition. Her opening acknowledgement of the company's historical success demonstrated strategic sophistication established common ground before introducing critique. However, she continued, Horizon's analysis identifies concerning divergence between Tech Fusion's market messaging and operational reality. The first slide displayed a comprehensive timeline of Tech Fusion's security innovations, impressive initially, then showing steadily decreasing substantive advancements despite increasing marketing claims. Page 1 outlines how Tech Fusion has systematically prioritized market expansion over core security enhancement for the past 5 years. Board members studied the meticulous documentation with growing discomfort. The analysis wasn't subjective opinion, but data-driven assessment comparing development resources against marketing expenditures. Page 2 details security vulnerabilities identified by your internal teams, but left unaddressed due to cost considerations. This revelation caused visible alarm. Internal vulnerability assessments were confidential, yet Horizon had somehow obtained precise details of Tech Fusion's risk management decisions. Page 3 quantifies environmental impact of your server infrastructure compared to industry standards, highlighting efficiency gaps costing millions annually. Each point landed with surgical precision, supported by irrefutable data. Many statistics came from TechFusion's own internal documents, information that should have remained inaccessible to outside investors. Page 4 examines ethical implications of recent acquisition strategies, particularly concerning privacy practices of acquired companies. Through 30 methodical minutes, Olivia outlined systematic issues undermining TechFusion's long-term sustainability. Her presentation style remained impeccably professional, no accusations, just factual analysis delivered with calm authority. Most disturbing to the board wasn't the information itself, though concerning, but its comprehensiveness. Horizon possessed insights into TechFusion's operations that suggested either extraordinary analytical capabilities or internal sources. Throughout the presentation, Nate remained outwardly composed while internally calculating damage control strategies. The weaknesses Olivia highlighted weren't fabricated. They represented actual vulnerabilities he had consistently deprioritized in favor of market expansion. In conclusion, Olivia stated, displaying a final slide, these issues collectively create substantial risk to TechFusion's market position, regulatory standing, and shareholder value. Horizon believes addressing them requires fundamental recalibration of corporate priorities. The silence following her presentation spoke volumes. She had systematically dismantled TechFusion's carefully constructed external image, revealing problematic internal realities with precision that left little room for dismissal. These are serious allegations. Roger Matthews, longest-serving board member, broke the silence. Though presented as analysis, they fundamentally question our governance oversight. Not allegations, Mr. Matthews, Olivia corrected gently. Documented facts. Every point references verifiable data, much from TechFusion's own systems. Glances exchanged across the table communicated unspoken questions. How did she obtain this information? Who might have provided internal access? Miss Hayes, Jennifer Winters from the Audit Committee, interjected. Your assessment suggests operational knowledge beyond what's typically available to shareholders. May I ask how Horizon developed such detailed insights? Thorough research, Ms. Winters. TechFusion's technical documentation contains subtle indicators visible to those with appropriate expertise. Patent filings reveal development priorities. Recruitment patterns demonstrate resource allocation. These data points, properly analyzed, tell a comprehensive story. Her explanation, while plausible, didn't fully satisfy the room. The precision of certain details suggested additional sources. Nate finally entered the conversation, voice measured despite internal tension. While we appreciate Horizon's thorough analysis, many of these points represent strategic trade-offs rather than oversights. Market leadership requires balancing competing priorities. Absolutely, Olivia agreed smoothly. The question isn't whether trade-offs occur, but whether they're made with full understanding of long-term consequences. TechFusion's recent decisions suggest prioritizing quarterly metrics over sustainable security leadership. The subtle challenge to Nate's leadership didn't go unnoticed. Several board members shifted uncomfortably, caught between loyalty to their CEO and recognition of valid concerns. What exactly is Horizon proposing? Asked Henderson, attempting to redirect toward constructive discussion. 3 specific actions, Olivia responded promptly. First, independent security audit of all TechFusion products and services. Second, establishment of an ethics committee with real authority over product decisions. Third, realignment of executive compensation with long-term security outcomes rather than market metrics alone. The third recommendation targeted Nate directly. His substantial compensation package tied primarily to stock price and market share growth. These proposals deserve serious consideration, agreed Elena Rodriguez, newest board member and former cybersecurity expert. Recent market shifts suggest increased vulnerability to emerging competitors with stronger ethical frameworks. The comment revealed fracturing consensus, exactly what Nate had feared and Olivia had anticipated. By presenting legitimate business concerns rather than personal grievances, she had created space for independent board members to question established patterns. For the remaining 2 hours, discussion continued with subtly shifting dynamics. Board members previously deferential to Nate began asking pointed questions about issues Olivia had highlighted. The unified front he had carefully cultivated showed its first significant cracks. As the meeting concluded, board members departed with subdued conversations, processing implications of Horizon's unexpected influence. Nate remained seated, reviewing notes while subtly indicating he wished to speak with Olivia privately. When the room emptied except for them, he finally looked up. Impressive performance. You've clearly planned this intervention carefully. Not intervention, Olivia corrected, organizing her materials. Responsible shareholder engagement. with remarkably detailed internal knowledge, he noted. Knowledge that raises significant questions about information security. If Horizon could identify these vulnerabilities through analysis, imagine what dedicated competitors might discover. Her response redirected his implied accusation into further evidence supporting her concerns. Nate abandoned pretense of professional distance. What do you actually want, Olivia? This can't simply be about investment returns. Why not? Tech Fusion represents significant unrealized value if properly managed. Horizon's fiduciary responsibility requires advocating for governance improvements. 20 years of silence followed by precisely targeted critique suggest additional motivation. Olivia closed her portfolio, meeting his gaze directly. Perhaps I'm simply returning professional courtesy. You made unilateral decisions about our partnership based on your priorities. Now I'm making investment decisions based on mine. The parallel to their marriage's dissolution hung between them, unacknowledged, yet unmistakable. The board seems receptive to your recommendations, Nate observed, conceding temporary tactical advantage. Though implementation details remain undefined, Horizon has prepared comprehensive implementation frameworks for each proposal. We'll distribute them before the next meeting. Her preparation extended beyond critique to solutions, another indication of long-term strategic planning rather than reactionary pressure. You've changed, he said finally, statement rather than compliment. Evolution is necessary for survival, Olivia replied. Some adapt to changing environments, others maintain patterns until extinction becomes inevitable. The metaphor's application to Tech Fusion's market position, and potentially Nate's leadership, required no elaboration. This conversation feels unfinished, he said as she prepared to leave. It is, Olivia acknowledged, but continuation requires honest recognition of past choices and present realities. When you're ready for that discussion, Horizon remains open to productive dialogue. The deliberately ambiguous reference to business collaboration or personal reconciliation left Nate with questions she had no intention of immediately answering. Olivia had nearly reached the elevator when Nate caught up, unwilling to end their interaction on her terms. One question before you leave, he insisted. Your presentation mentioned ethical algorithms designed for transparent accountability. That technology directly parallels research from Stanford's emerging ethics lab. Olivia maintained neutral expression despite internal surprise at his awareness of this connection. Is there a question, Mr. Reed? The timing seems relevant. Stanford recently announced a new PhD candidate joining that specific research initiative, Isabella Parker Hayes. Relation, I presume? The direct reference to their daughter, unexpected at this juncture, momentarily disrupted Olivia's careful composure. Yes, she acknowledged simply. My daughter. Our daughter, Nate corrected quietly. Olivia's eyes narrowed slightly. Biologically, yes. Practically, no. You made that distinction clear 20 years ago. I didn't know. You knew I was pregnant when you left, she interrupted, voice remaining controlled despite emotional undercurrent. The choice was made with available information. The elevator arrived, doors opening to momentary privacy. Isabella graduates next month, Olivia continued, entering the elevator. PhD in ethical computing with honors. She's brilliant, compassionate, and principled. Everything you could hope for in a child you never bothered to know. As doors began closing, Nate placed his hand to stop them. Does she know about me, about Tech Fusion? She knows her father chose career over family. Beyond that, she's formed her own conclusions based on publicly available information. Olivia pressed a lobby button. Her Stanford position places her in proximity to Tech Fusion. Whether that becomes relevant depends entirely on her independent decisions. I would like to meet her, Nate said, surprising himself with the unexpected certainty behind the statement. That's not my decision to make, Olivia replied as the doors finally closed between them. For the first time in her life, you'll need to earn something rather than simply claiming ownership. Left alone in the hallway, Nate confronted revelations beyond business strategy. The daughter he had abandoned had grown into an accomplished academic working in his industry, potentially a rival intellect shaped by the woman whose capabilities he had consistently underestimated. The professional confrontation he had anticipated had expanded to include personal dimensions long suppressed. Whatever control he believed he maintained over their interaction had just shifted dramatically with one name, Isabella. The search began at midnight. Alone in his penthouse office, Nate methodically typed Isabella Parker Hayes into his private browser. Results populated immediately: academic publications, research citations, conference presentations. His daughter's digital footprint revealed remarkable achievement without exposing personal details. Her Stanford profile appeared first: Isabella Parker Hayes, PhD candidate, ethical computing initiative, research focus, transparent algorithm accountability, and automated decision systems. The professional headshot showed a young woman with his analytical eyes and Olivia's determined expression, genetic inheritance visibly blended with 20 years of maternal influence. Her composed smile projected confidence without arrogance, intelligence without coldness. Nate opened her most cited paper, Ethical Frameworks for Machine Learning, Beyond Utilitarian Approaches. The introduction outlined principles he'd never prioritized at Tech Fusion: transparency, fairness, accountability. The methodology demonstrated rigorous thinking paired with moral considerations his company increasingly neglected. "Impressive," he murmured, recognizing her brilliance even through unfamiliar ethical terminology. Hours disappeared as he traced her academic progression backward: Stanford acceptance, undergraduate honors at Berkeley, high school valedictorian speech focused on technology ethics. Each achievement documented without reference to family connections or advantages. She had earned every recognition through merit alone. By dawn, Nate shifted focus to Olivia's career trajectory. Horizon Investments' public profile revealed thoughtful growth rather than aggressive expansion. Their investment portfolio consistently backed companies with strong ethical frameworks alongside innovative technology. Annual returns exceeded industry averages despite, or perhaps because of, their selective approach. More telling were the gaps, what remained conspicuously absent from both digital records. No social media presence for either woman. No interviews discussing personal history. No references to Tech Fusion connections despite operating in overlapping industries. They had built successful lives while maintaining careful privacy about their past. Most striking was what he found examining Horizon's earliest corporate filings. The seed funding that launched Olivia's company hadn't come from his settlement. Those funds remained untouched in the trust established for Isabella's education. Instead, Horizon began with modest capital Olivia had generated through her own investment acumen, growing organically rather than through leveraged expansion. She never used my money, Nate realized, confronting unexpected evidence of Olivia's independence. The narrative he'd maintained, that his generous settlement had facilitated her comfortable life, collapsed against documented reality. By morning, one conclusion became inescapable. Both women had flourished without him, requiring neither his financial support nor his influence to achieve remarkable success. Sleep-deprived and unsettled, Nate canceled his morning meetings. Standing before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he'd conquered, he confronted questions long suppressed beneath ambition's constant demands. What exactly had he gained by abandoning his family? The obvious answers, freedom, focus, advancement, suddenly seemed hollow against the evidence of what he'd lost. He justified leaving Olivia as necessary sacrifice for Tech Fusion's success. Yet Horizon's financial performance suggested her business acumen might have strengthened rather than hindered the company. The partnership he discarded had potentially offered complementary strengths rather than competing priorities. More disturbing was recognizing Isabella's brilliance in ethical computing, precisely the perspective Tech Fusion increasingly lacked. The daughter he'd never known might have provided exactly the moral compass his company now required. What was it all for? He whispered to his reflection in the window glass. 20 years of relentless focus had delivered everything he'd pursued: market dominance, industry recognition, personal wealth. Yet standing alone in his minimalist penthouse, surrounded by acquisition trophies and design awards, the achievement felt unexpectedly empty. Success had become circular logic, pursuing growth to enable further growth, accumulating wealth that remained largely untouched, collecting accolades that provided momentary satisfaction followed by renewed pressure to achieve more. For the first time since early career struggles, Nate confronted the fundamental question beneath his ambition: what constituted genuine success? The answer had seemed obvious for decades: market dominance, industry influence, recognized innovation. Now uncertainty crept into previously unquestioned assumptions. Isabella's research focused on ethical frameworks, systems for evaluating actions against values beyond profit maximization. What framework had guided his own choices? What values had shaped his decisions beyond competitive achievement? The answers proved disturbingly absent. He had pursued success without defining its purpose beyond accumulation and recognition. The realization left him standing motionless before his city view, confronting not just what he had accomplished, but what had been sacrificed to achieve it. The board meeting's aftermath revealed fracturing loyalties Nate had previously taken for granted. Executive committee members who once automatically aligned with his positions now approached decisions with newfound caution, weighing Horizon's critique alongside established protocols. The security audit proposal deserves consideration, his CTO suggested during Wednesday's leadership meeting. External assessment might identify vulnerabilities we've overlooked. Similar sentiments emerged from previously reliable allies. The CFO questioned resource allocation between marketing and development. The Chief Product Officer advocated for ethical review processes that would extend release timelines. These suggestions, reasonable on their merits, represented significant departure from TechFusion's established growth-first culture. The shift became more apparent as Nate's customary objections met polite but firm resistance rather than immediate agreement. Quarterly targets remain essential, he reminded the executive team. These proposed changes would impact short-term performance metrics. Perhaps our metrics need adjustment, responded his normally compliant COO. Sustainable growth might require different measurement frameworks. The language echoed Olivia's presentation. Evidence her perspective had penetrated TechFusion's leadership thinking. More concerning was realizing how thoroughly his executive team had previously suppressed their reservations. They had recognized the issues Horizon highlighted, but remained silent until external validation made concerns expressible. This revelation extended beyond professional dynamics. Invitations to weekend gatherings and social events had steadily decreased over recent years. Conversations beyond business topics had gradually disappeared from his interactions. When had genuine connection last occurred in his daily experience? That evening, reviewing his contact list for someone to join him for dinner, Nate confronted uncomfortable truth. His relationship circle contained business associates rather than friends, professional connections rather than personal ones. The distinction had blurred years ago, leaving him surrounded by people who engaged with his position rather than his person. His executive assistant's voice interrupted this realization. Mr. Reed, Senator Wilson's office called about next week's Technology Council. Also, Ms. Shaw reached out regarding potential collaboration. Veronica Shaw? Nate asked, surprised to hear from his former companion. Yes, sir. She mentioned a banking security initiative that might interest TechFusion. The contact was purely professional. Their personal relationship long concluded when he'd moved on to relationships that served his evolving ambitions. Even his romantic connections had become transactional, valuable for their strategic advantages rather than emotional fulfillment. Surrounded by TechFusion's success, yet fundamentally isolated within it, Nate recognized how thoroughly he had merged personal identity with corporate persona. Beyond his CEO role, what remained of the man who had once loved Olivia, who had created Isabella, who had possessed dreams beyond market domination? The crisis reached critical mass 3 days after the board meeting. Reviewing acquisition proposals in his home office at midnight, Nate found himself unable to focus on financial projections and integration timelines. Instead, his attention repeatedly drifted to Isabella's research papers spread across his desk, her brilliance undeniable, her ethical perspective increasingly compelling. One passage particularly captured his attention. Technology without ethical frameworks inevitably optimizes for creator benefit rather than collective good. The question isn't whether values shape innovation, but whose values dominate the process. The observation struck with uncomfortable precision. TechFusion's development had indeed prioritized market advantage over societal benefit whenever those objectives conflicted. He had justified these choices through shareholder obligation and competitive necessity, without questioning underlying assumptions. Closing the acquisition documents, Nate made an unprecedented decision. He cleared his schedule for the following day, canceling meetings that would normally take priority over any personal consideration. Morning found him walking through city streets without destination, observing ordinary lives with unusual attention. Families hurried to school and work, street vendors prepared food with care, construction workers collaborated on building projects. Each interaction contained purpose beyond profit, connection, service, creation. Near noon, he found himself outside a university lecture hall where a technology ethics panel was scheduled, an event he would normally consider irrelevant to practical business concerns. On impulse, he entered anonymously, taking a seat in the back row. The discussion explored questions TechFusion routinely dismissed. Who benefits from innovation? What responsibilities accompany technological power? How should success be measured beyond financial metrics? Listening without corporate filters, Nate found these considerations increasingly difficult to dismiss. The ethical frameworks he had relegated to academic theory suddenly seemed essential to sustainable innovation. The values he had subordinated to growth imperatives emerged as potentially critical to meaningful achievement. Walking home through evening crowds, Nate confronted fundamental questions. What legacy did he actually want to create? What values should guide his remaining productive years? What success would provide genuine satisfaction beyond temporary recognition? For the first time in decades, the answers weren't immediately clear. The certainty that had driven 20 years of single-minded ambition yielded to questions without obvious resolution. questions that demanded honest examination of priorities long accepted without reflection. That night, instead of returning to acquisition documents, Nate wrote 3 questions on his office whiteboard. What would success beyond wealth accumulation look like? What values should guide TechFusion's next evolution? Is reconciliation possible with those I've harmed through my choices? The questions remained unanswered, but their presence represented significant departure from unquestioned ambition. Whether this reassessment would translate into meaningful change remained uncertain, but the crisis had achieved what 20 years of success had not, forcing genuine reflection on what truly constituted value in a life defined by its pursuit. Stanford's emerging ethics lab occupied the 3rd floor of the computer science building, glass walls revealing researchers engaged in animated discussions amid holographic displays and collaborative workspaces. Nate approached the reception area with uncharacteristic hesitation, his confident stride giving way to measured steps. "I'm here to see Isabella Parker Hayes," he informed the student assistant. "Nate Reed. I don't have an appointment." The name recognition was immediate. "Mr. Reed from TechFusion? Isabella mentioned you might stop by this week." This unexpected detail gave Nate pause. Had Olivia informed Isabella of their boardroom encounter? Had his daughter anticipated this visit before he decided to make it? "Her office is down the hall, last door on the right. She's finishing a meeting but should be available shortly." The corridor displayed research posters highlighting the lab's projects, algorithm transparency initiatives, ethical AI frameworks, accountability metrics for automated decision systems. Each represented direct challenges to TechFusion's market-focused approach to technology development. Isabella's office door stood partially open, revealing a compact space filled with organized purpose. Bookshelves contained technical volumes alongside philosophy texts. Digital screens displayed code sequences and ethical frameworks in parallel development. The desk held a single framed photograph, Isabella and Olivia, at what appeared to be a graduation ceremony, both smiling with identical determined expressions. "Mr. Reed," came a voice from behind him, "punctual as your reputation suggests." Nate turned to face the young woman he had last seen as an ultrasound image 20 years earlier. In person, Isabella projected composed confidence beyond her years. Professional attire, direct gaze, measured expression revealing neither eagerness nor hostility. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he responded, suddenly aware of how thoroughly unprepared he felt despite days of anticipation. "Professional courtesy seemed appropriate given our overlapping research areas," Isabella replied, gesturing toward her office. Though I admit curiosity played a factor as well. As she led him inside, Nate noted details that echoed both parents, his analytical focus evidenced by methodically organized research materials. Olivia's strategic patience reflected in carefully annotated long-term project timelines. "You knew I would come," he observed as they sat across her desk from each other. "I calculated probability above 70% following your boardroom encounter with my mother." Isabella's slight smile acknowledged the analytical approach they apparently shared.
"Your discovery of my existence and position would naturally prompt investigation."
The matter-of-fact assessment, viewing his actions as predictable patterns rather than emotional responses, struck Nate as precisely how he might have analyzed someone else's behavior. "Olivia told you about our meeting. She mentioned Horizon's board representation in your subsequent discussion. The specifics were unnecessary. Your presence here confirms the essentials." Their conversation had barely begun, yet Nate found himself subtly defensive against Isabella's measured evaluation. She exhibited none of the emotional reaction he had subconsciously anticipated from an abandoned child. No visible anger, no eager connection, simply composed assessment of the situation's parameters. "I've read your research," he offered, seeking solid conversational ground. "Your work on transparent algorithm accountability shows remarkable insight, yet contradicts TechFusion's entire development philosophy," Isabella noted. "Interesting that you would appreciate approaches your company actively avoids implementing." The observation landed with uncomfortable precision. Rather than defensive dismissal, Nate found himself nodding in acknowledgement. Valid observation. Recent events have prompted reconsideration of certain established practices. Isabella studied him with academic detachment. Reconsideration triggered by what factors? Market pressure, regulatory concerns, or perhaps personal reassessment following unexpected reconnection with past decisions? The question, penetrating yet delivered without emotional charge, established the fundamental dynamic of their first meeting. Isabella approached him not as long-lost father, but as case study in ethical decision-making, worthy of objective analysis rather than emotional investment. "Your security protocol architecture prioritizes efficiency over transparency," Isabella observed, referencing specific tech fusion products with technical precision. Implementation speed serves market advantage while creating accountability gaps. Their conversation had shifted from personal history to professional critique, territory where Isabella displayed exceptional command. She systematically outlined ethical vulnerabilities in Tech Fusion's approach, demonstrating thorough knowledge of both technical architecture and moral implications. The distributed authentication system you implemented last quarter introduces 7 distinct points where user data becomes vulnerable to extraction without notification, she continued. Was this a conscious trade-off decision or oversight during development? The question required Nate to consider motivations he rarely articulated. Efficiency requirements demanded streamlined protocols. The vulnerability windows were deemed acceptably minimal given implementation benefits. Acceptable to whom? Isabella pressed. The users whose data becomes exposed? The developers who face ethical dilemmas when instructed to prioritize speed over security? Or the executives whose compensation increases with market share regardless of downstream consequences? Her questioning technique revealed sophisticated understanding of corporate decision structures, parsing how institutional incentives shape technical choices with moral implications. Each inquiry penetrated layers of justification Nate typically employed without conscious examination. These questions extend beyond tech fusion, he noted, attempting to broaden context. The entire industry faces similar trade-offs between innovation speed and comprehensive protection. Industry standard practices don't constitute ethical justification, Isabella countered. Collective compromise doesn't transform moral shortcuts into acceptable practice. The principle struck with unexpected force. Throughout his career, Nate had justified decisions through competitive necessity. If everyone faced the same trade-offs, individual choices became matter of survival rather than ethics. Isabella's framework rejected this diffusion of responsibility, insisting on independent moral assessment regardless of industry norms. Your research proposes alternative approaches, Nate acknowledged. Transparent accountability frameworks that protect users while maintaining competitive functionality. Implementation requires prioritizing long-term integrity over quarterly metrics, Isabella confirmed. Values alignment precedes technical solutions. The conversation had moved far beyond casual introduction into fundamental examination of principles guiding technological development. Rather than resenting this unexpected direction, Nate found himself genuinely engaged with perspectives he had routinely dismissed throughout his career. If Tech Fusion were to implement your transparency framework, he asked, what would you consider essential first steps? The question represented significant departure from his usual approach, seeking guidance rather than directing outcomes. Isabella's slightly raised eyebrow acknowledged this shift before she responded with characteristic precision. Comprehensive vulnerability disclosure, ethical review board with veto authority over development decisions, compensation structures rewarding security integrity rather than merely market position. Her recommendations precisely echoed Olivia's board presentation, either remarkable coincidence or evidence of collaborative thinking between mother and daughter. The parallels suggested principles Nate had abandoned when leaving Olivia had found expression through Isabella's research, coming full circle to challenge the company he had built by rejecting those very considerations. As their conversation continued, Nate experienced growing awareness that transcended the specific discussion topics. Isabella represented not just his biological daughter, but the embodiment of complementary strengths he had systematically separated in his life and company. She possessed his analytical precision and technological understanding, paired with Olivia's ethical framework and strategic patience. The combination produced something remarkable: technical brilliance guided by moral clarity, innovative thinking anchored in principled considerations. Most striking was recognizing that Isabella had developed these qualities entirely without his influence. The daughter he had never known had independently cultivated the very perspective Tech Fusion increasingly required. Ethical innovation principles that might sustain the company beyond mere market dominance. Your approach integrates technical advancement with ethical imperatives, Nate observed, something increasingly necessary in evolving regulatory environments. Necessity extends beyond regulatory compliance, Isabella corrected. Ethical frameworks provide sustainable foundations regardless of external enforcement. Values-based innovation creates inherent advantages independent of compliance requirements. The perspective struck Nate as simultaneously foreign to his established thinking yet increasingly compelling. Throughout his career, ethics had represented external constraint rather than internal guidance, regulations to navigate rather than principles to embrace. Isabella's framework inverted this relationship, positioning ethical considerations as foundation rather than limitation. The approach suggested alternative development paradigm where moral clarity enhanced rather than restricted technical innovation. Your mother mentioned you've never sought connection with tech fusion, despite clear aptitude for security development, Nate noted, attempting to understand her career choices. Alignment between personal values and institutional practices determines meaningful contribution, Isabella explained. Technical capability alone provides insufficient foundation for collaboration. The principle applied beyond professional choices to their personal interaction. Isabella evaluated potential relationship with her biological father through the same framework she applied to institutional engagement, assessing values alignment rather than merely acknowledging connection. This realization brought unexpected clarity to their conversation. She wasn't seeking emotional validation or personal history, but evaluating whether meaningful relationship could exist based on shared principles rather than biological circumstance. You're determining whether connection with me serves values you consider essential, Nate concluded, articulating the underlying dynamic. Isabella's slight smile acknowledged his accurate assessment. Relationships require shared commitment to mutual growth. Historical patterns provide predictive indicators for future interactions. The analytical framing of human connection struck Nate as simultaneously foreign and familiar. His own approach to relationships reflected back through ethical lens he had never applied to personal connections. As afternoon light shifted across the office, their conversation gradually transformed from formal evaluation to cautious exploration. Isabella's rigorous questioning softened slightly as Nate demonstrated genuine engagement with perspectives he had previously dismissed. Your recent board meeting response surprised my mother, Isabella noted. She expected defensive rejection rather than apparent consideration. Horizon's analysis was meticulously documented, Nate acknowledged. Dismissing valid critique serves neither company interests nor personal growth. The statement represented significant evolution from his typical response to criticism. Isabella tilted her head slightly, studying this departure from expected patterns. Recent events have prompted reassessment of certain foundational assumptions, Nate continued, offering rare glimpse into his internal process. Success metrics I've prioritized may require recalibration. Isabella considered this with characteristic thoroughness. Reassessment typically follows disconfirming evidence or values misalignment. Which factor predominates in your current reflection? The question invited deeper disclosure than Nate typically provided, yet he found himself responding with unexpected candor. Both factors converge. Market indicators suggest declining returns from established approaches. Personal circumstances highlight values questions previously unexamined. Personal circumstances meaning discovery of my existence? Isabella asked directly. Among other revelations, Nate confirmed. Learning about your research, understanding Horizon's strategic approach, these elements highlight alternative frameworks I've systematically dismissed. The acknowledgement created subtle shift in their interaction, from formal assessment to tentative personal exchange. Isabella's expression remained measured, yet her posture relaxed slightly. I have no interest in manufactured father-daughter connection, she stated clearly. Biological relation without shared values offers limited foundation for meaningful interaction. Understandable position, Nate agreed. What would constitute sufficient foundation from your perspective? Isabella considered this thoughtfully. Demonstrated commitment to ethical principles beyond convenient circumstance. Consistent alignment between stated values and practical decisions. Genuine willingness to reassess established patterns when evidence indicates necessity. The requirements applied equally to potential personal relationship and business reform. Characteristic integration of professional and personal frameworks. Reasonable criteria, Nate acknowledged, though comprehensive evidence would require extended observation, precisely why meaningful connection develops through consistent interaction rather than singular conversation, Isabella noted. Patterns reveal priorities more accurately than declarations. As their meeting approached conclusion, practical next steps emerged through mutual consideration rather than emotional impulse. Tech Fusion Security Department hosts monthly research reviews, Nate mentioned. Your transparency framework might provide valuable perspective if you're willing to present. Contingent on genuine implementation potential rather than theoretical discussion, Isabella stipulated. I don't participate in ethical washing exercises. Understood. I'd propose starting with specific application to our distributed authentication system, addressing vulnerabilities you identified with potential transparency solutions. The suggestion represented concrete engagement with her critique rather than general principles, specific action that could be measured against stated intentions. Isabella nodded thoughtfully. Send the technical specifications. I'll develop implementation proposal for consideration. As they concluded their meeting, neither attempted artificial personal connection nor emotional reconciliation. Instead, they established potential framework for ongoing interaction based on shared intellectual engagement with meaningful challenges. Walking Isabella to her office door, Nate experienced unfamiliar uncertainty, the outcome depending not on his determination but mutual evaluation of compatibility previously unconsidered. This conversation proved unexpectedly productive, Isabella acknowledged as they parted. Whether it represents anomaly or pattern remains to be determined. I look forward to finding out, Nate replied, recognizing that for the first time in decades, he faced a relationship where power dynamics favored the other participant. Whatever connection might develop with his daughter would depend entirely on his ability to demonstrate values he had long neglected, a challenge both unsettling and unexpectedly compelling. 3 days after meeting Isabella, Nate requested private conversation with Olivia. The location, neutral ground at Fairmont Hotel's executive lounge, suggested professional context rather than personal confrontation. Olivia arrived precisely on time, selecting a corner table offering both privacy and clear exit path. "Thank you for meeting," Nate began as they settled across from each other. His expression conveyed carefully controlled tension beneath professional courtesy. "Horizon maintains open communication with all investment partners," Olivia responded, establishing immediate business framework for their interaction. Nate studied her momentarily before abandoning pretense. "This isn't about Horizon's investment position. I met with Isabella." "I'm aware," Olivia acknowledged. "She mentioned your conversation was productive." Surprisingly so, Nate agreed. "She possesses remarkable intellect and ethical clarity, qualities that raise significant questions about your long-term strategy." Olivia maintained neutral expression. "Which strategy specifically concerns you?" 20 years of systematic accumulation of Tech Fusion stock, strategic positioning of our daughter in directly competitive research, precisely timed board intervention highlighting vulnerabilities only someone with intimate company knowledge could identify. Nate leaned forward slightly. "These elements suggest coordinated approach rather than independent developments. Your point being?" "This appears meticulously designed for maximum impact, personally and professionally. 20 years preparing revenge, served cold." The accusation hung between them. Rather than immediate denial, Olivia took measured sip of water, considering her response carefully. "Interesting theory," she observed finally, "though it assigns me rather extraordinary foresight and single-minded focus. 20 years orchestrating elaborate revenge seems excessive even for justified grievance." "You've always possessed exceptional strategic patience," Nate countered, "and Tech Fusion provided perfect target, professionally valuable while personally significant." "Your perspective contains fundamental misconception," Olivia noted. "It assumes you remain central consideration in my decisions after our separation, that I structured my life and Isabella's development around eventual confrontation with you. The evidence suggests precisely that conclusion, evidence filtered through lens of your own centrality," Olivia observed. "The narcissism that colored our marriage apparently remains intact." The assessment, delivered without heat but precise accuracy, momentarily disrupted Nate's confident narrative. "Explain the coordination between Horizon's board intervention and Isabella's research focus," he challenged. "The timing cannot be coincidental." "You're correct about coordination, though mistaken about motivation," Olivia agreed. "But understanding requires perspective adjustment you've historically resisted." "I'm listening," Nate stated, expression suggesting limited patience for explanation contradicting his conclusion. Olivia studied him thoughtfully, assessing whether genuine communication possibility existed or merely opportunity for him to confirm predetermined narrative. "Very well," she decided, "though complete understanding requires examining fundamentally different perspective than you've maintained these 20 years. Horizon's investment in Tech Fusion began 11 years ago," Olivia explained, "when Isabella demonstrated exceptional aptitude for computing systems during middle school science projects. Her natural abilities clearly indicated potential technology career." Nate listened with analytical focus, searching for inconsistencies or manipulation within her account. Given her talents, eventual intersection with Tech Fusion became statistically probable, regardless of our personal history. The company dominates security sector she demonstrated interest in. As her mother, I needed to ensure that when that intersection occurred, Isabella would be protected. "Protected from what exactly?" Nate questioned. "From precisely what happened to me," Olivia answered directly. "Professional dismissal based on personal connection rather than contribution merit. Tech Fusion's corporate culture consistently devalues women in technical roles, particularly those perceived as challenging established leadership." The assessment struck uncomfortably close to documented reality within Tech Fusion's executive structure, something Nate had never addressed despite occasional HR concerns. My investment strategy wasn't revenge but insurance, Olivia continued, creating necessary influence to protect Isabella's career opportunities if they eventually involved your company. That explains Horizon's position, Nate acknowledged reluctantly. Not Isabella's research focus directly challenging TechFusion's approach. Isabella's ethical framework developed independently through her own experiences and observations, Olivia clarified. Her focus on transparency and accountability emerged naturally from her fundamental values. That those principles highlight TechFusion's vulnerabilities reflects your company's choices, not coordinated attack. The explanation contained logical consistency Nate found difficult to dismiss, though it contradicted his preferred narrative of calculated revenge. If protection rather than revenge motivated your actions, why wait 20 years to exercise Horizon's influence? He challenged. Why precisely now? Because Isabella's Stanford position created immediate proximity to TechFusion, Olivia explained. Multiple recruiters approached her following her presentation at Bay Area Security Conference 3 months ago, including your VP of Research. This detail surprised Nate. He hadn't been informed of recruitment efforts targeting Isabella. Your company actively pursuing Isabella necessitated establishing appropriate influence to ensure fair treatment, Olivia continued. Horizon's board representation wasn't timed for dramatic effect but practical necessity as she entered your professional orbit. The timeline matched verifiable events, suggesting Olivia's explanation contained factual foundation rather than convenient fabrication. You could have simply told Isabella to avoid TechFusion entirely, Nate suggested. Olivia's slight smile acknowledged the fundamental misunderstanding the statement revealed. Isabella makes her own decisions based on her own evaluation criteria. She's neither my instrument nor my extension. She's an independent person with agency I've always respected. The principle clearly guided Olivia's parenting approach, developing Isabella's autonomy rather than directing her choices. This framework directly contradicted Nate's assumption of coordinated revenge strategy. So she developed ethical frameworks challenging TechFusion's approach entirely independently? Nate questioned skeptically. She developed ethical frameworks based on her values and observations, Olivia corrected. That those frameworks highlight TechFusion's vulnerabilities reflects your company's choices, not our coordination. The explanation forced Nate to reconsider his initial assessment. What he had interpreted as calculated revenge increasingly appeared as protective preparation for inevitable intersection of family history with professional reality. Silence settled between them as Nate processed Olivia's explanation. The hotel lounge hummed with distant conversations while they remained isolated in momentary contemplation. I may have misinterpreted certain patterns, Nate acknowledged finally, concession clearly uncomfortable, yet deliberately offered. Understandable given limited information and natural defensive positioning, Olivia replied without pressing advantage. Perspective gaps develop over 20 years of separation. The measured response, neither triumphant nor accusatory, created space for continued exchange rather than escalated confrontation. Your board presentation highlighted substantive vulnerabilities rather than manufacturing convenient criticism, Nate continued. Professional assessment momentarily displacing personal defensiveness. The issues identified represent actual concerns requiring attention regardless of motivation behind their identification. Technical vulnerabilities exist independent of who identifies them, Olivia agreed. Addressing them benefits TechFusion regardless of historical context. This reframing, from personal attack to objective assessment, allowed professional consideration to temporarily supersede emotional reaction. Isabella suggested specific implementation approach for transparent authentication protocols, Nate mentioned. Her framework addresses security gaps while maintaining efficiency parameters. She mentioned your discussion, Olivia noted. She found your technical engagement with her research unexpectedly substantive. The observation contained neither encouragement nor discouragement regarding his connection with their daughter, maintaining Isabella's autonomy while acknowledging the interaction had occurred. I made fundamental mistakes, Nate stated abruptly, surprising both Olivia and himself with the direct acknowledgement, both professionally and personally. Olivia remained silent, allowing space for elaboration without demand. TechFusion's vulnerabilities stemmed directly from prioritizing growth metrics over security integrity, exactly what you cautioned against years ago, he continued. The ethical framework I dismissed as impractical constraint proved essential for sustainable innovation. The admission, delivered without qualification or defensive context, represented significant departure from his established communication pattern. Professionally, that realization comes late but not too late for correction, Olivia observed. TechFusion retains substantial market position from which to implement reformed approaches. Her response focused on forward possibility rather than past failure, characteristic of her strategic perspective. And personally, Nate asked, question revealing unusual vulnerability. Olivia considered this carefully. Personal mistakes create consequences that cannot be simply reversed through acknowledgement. Trust requires rebuilding through consistent demonstration rather than declaration. With you? He pressed. My trust considerations remain secondary, Olivia replied honestly. Isabella's autonomy takes precedence. Whatever relationship might develop between you depends entirely on her independent assessment, not my influence or permission. The boundary, clearly established without emotional charge, defined essential parameter for any potential reconciliation. Isabella would determine her own relationship with her father based on her evaluation rather than her mother's direction. That seems appropriate, Nate acknowledged. Though discomfortingly beyond my control. Precisely the point, Olivia noted. Meaningful connection requires respecting others' agency rather than directing outcomes, something worth practicing, regardless of specific relationship development. The principle applied equally to personal relationships and corporate leadership. Integration Nate had historically resisted yet increasingly recognized as necessary for sustainable success in both domains. If you've been following this incredible journey of accountability and redemption, now's the perfect moment to hit that subscribe button. This story shows how our choices create ripples that can last decades, and I'll be sharing more powerful true stories that will make you think about your own life decisions. Has someone ever underestimated you the way Nate underestimated Olivia? Or have you had to rebuild trust after it was broken? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps me continue bringing these meaningful stories to more viewers who need to hear them. Now, let's see how this 20-year journey finally resolves. 6 months after the boardroom confrontation, TechFusion headquarters displayed subtle but significant changes. The executive floor, once isolated sanctuary for leadership decisions, now featured collaborative spaces where development teams presented directly to decision makers. Glass walls replaced opaque barriers, creating visual transparency matching newly implemented policies. Most noticeable was Nate Reed's transformed leadership approach. Monday strategy meetings now began with ethical impact assessment before financial projections. Development timelines included explicit security validation phases. Customer privacy protection received resource priority previously reserved for market expansion. The Pattern Shield update implementation needs additional review, Nate informed his executive team, studying documentation with newfound attention to details previously delegated. The authentication protocol creates potential vulnerability during transition phases. Pushing back release adds development costs, his CFO noted, testing whether old priorities had truly shifted. Quarterly numbers would benefit from maintaining schedule. Security integrity takes precedence over schedule, Nate responded without hesitation. I'd rather explain temporary financial impact to shareholders than security breach consequences to customers. The exchange, witnessed by team members accustomed to growth-first mandates, represented fundamental reorientation of decision frameworks. What began as reluctant response to Horizon's pressure had evolved into genuine conviction as implementation results validated ethical approaches. More telling were Nate's personal changes. His previously relentless schedule now included regular afternoon breaks. His communication style shifted from directive pronouncements to thoughtful dialogue. He began appearing at company community service events, not for promotional photos, but active participation. You've been making quite the transformation, William Chen observed during their weekly review. The executive team has noticed substantial changes in leadership approach, necessary evolution, Nate replied simply. Sustainable innovation requires balanced perspective I've historically neglected. Most significant was his involvement with TechFusion's newly established Ethics Advisory Council, a diverse group of experts evaluating development decisions against comprehensive moral frameworks. During their inaugural session, Nate did something previously unimaginable. He listened more than he spoke, taking detailed notes as perspectives challenged long-standing assumptions. Your active engagement with ethical considerations has surprised many, noted Dr. Martinez, council chairperson. Transformation of this magnitude rarely occurs without catalyst. Let's just say I received necessary perspective adjustment, Nate acknowledged. Sometimes seeing clearly requires significant disruption of established patterns. The transformation manifested beyond professional domains. His minimalist penthouse gradually accumulated signs of actual living, books beyond business topics, cooking equipment suggesting, meals prepared rather than delivered, photographs including one of Isabella's research team receiving innovation recognition. These changes, implemented consistently rather than performatively, suggested fundamental recalibration rather than strategic adjustment. Something essential had shifted in Nate's understanding of success and purpose, altering priorities that had remained fixed for decades. TechFusion's quarterly board meeting presented concrete evidence of organizational transformation. Olivia, representing Horizon Investments, arrived to find implemented changes exceeding initial recommendations. The Security Ethics Integration Program has completed initial implementation phase, Nate reported, displaying metrics reflecting comprehensive reform. All legacy systems have undergone transparent accountability review, with results published to our security portal. Board members reviewed documentation showing unprecedented disclosure of previously hidden vulnerability assessments. Rather than concealing security concerns, TechFusion now published comprehensive analysis alongside mitigation strategies, approach directly aligned with Isabella's research recommendations. Customer response has been remarkably positive, the chief marketing officer reported. Enterprise clients particularly value transparency regarding potential vulnerabilities. Renewal rates have increased 12% since implementation. The data contradicted long-standing assumption that security transparency would damage market confidence. Instead, ethical disclosure had enhanced customer trust while accelerating implementation of necessary improvements. The Ethics Review Board now has authority to pause any development project raising significant concerns, Nate continued. This authority has been exercised twice this quarter, resulting in substantive design modifications rather than mere cosmetic adjustments. This structural change represented genuine power reallocation rather than symbolic gesture. Technical decisions previously driven exclusively by market considerations now required ethical validation before proceeding. Most significant was TechFusion's adoption of the Transparent Algorithm Accountability Framework, implementation of principles developed through Isabella's research. The framework required all automated decision systems to provide explanation capabilities, bias detection mechanisms, and human oversight options. Implementation costs have been offset by reduced regulatory compliance expenses, the CFO acknowledged. Proactive ethical frameworks actually improve financial efficiency by preventing costly remediation requirements. Throughout the presentation, Olivia observed with careful neutrality. The changes aligned with Horizon's recommendations while extending beyond minimum requirements, suggesting genuine commitment rather than reluctant compliance. These reforms represent substantial progress, she noted during discussion period. Horizon acknowledges TechFusion's meaningful implementation efforts. The measured approval, professional rather than personal, maintained appropriate boundaries while recognizing legitimate transformation. Whatever personal history informed their interaction remained secondary to objective assessment of corporate reform. As the meeting concluded, industry analysts noted TechFusion's evolving approach had begun influencing broader market practices. Competitors increasingly adopted similar transparency mechanisms, recognizing competitive advantage gained through ethical frameworks rather than mere technical capabilities. The restaurant occupied middle ground between pretentious and casual, a small Italian establishment where conversations could occur without interruption or excessive formality. The dinner invitation had come from Isabella, addressed to both parents separately, establishing her agency in creating this unprecedented gathering. Olivia arrived first, selecting a corner table offering appropriate privacy. Nate followed minutes later, his typically commanding entrance subdued by evident uncertainty about appropriate approach. Isabella joined last, composed confidence guiding their initial interaction beyond awkward beginnings. "Thank you both for coming," she began once preliminary greetings concluded. "My research team received implementation funding I wanted to share with you." The neutral starting point, professional achievement rather than personal dynamics, created comfortable foundation for their interaction. Discussion of Isabella's work provided familiar territory where genuine connection could develop without forced intimacy. The transparency framework implementation at Northern Trust represents significant validation, Nate observed, demonstrating genuine understanding of her research. Their security infrastructure presents complex integration challenges. We're developing modular implementation approaches for varying technical environments, Isabella explained, animation entering her typically measured expression when discussing her work. Ethical frameworks must adapt to existing infrastructure without sacrificing core principles. The conversation flowed with increasing ease, technical discussion gradually incorporating personal perspectives and occasionally lighter moments. When Isabella described a particularly challenging implementation obstacle, both parents independently offered identical solution approaches, creating momentary synchronicity that prompted shared recognition. Some problem-solving approaches apparently transfer genetically, Isabella noted with slight smile, or perhaps through early developmental observation. Nature and nurture simultaneously, Olivia suggested, though your implementation elegance exceeds either of our approaches. As dinner progressed, carefully maintained boundaries gradually relaxed. Isabella shared stories from her Stanford experience. Olivia described Horizon's evolving investment philosophy. Nate, most surprisingly, spoke of his recent community mentorship program with underserved youth interested in technology careers. Teaching basics to beginners forces reassessment of fundamental assumptions, he explained. Questions I haven't considered in decades suddenly require thoughtful explanation. The observation contained wisdom beyond its immediate context, applying equally to family relationships being cautiously reconstructed through this dinner. Foundational assumptions long unexamined now required conscious consideration as new connections formed. No dramatic reconciliation occurred. No emotional declarations transformed 20 years of separation into instant family cohesion. Instead, three individuals with shared history and distinct perspectives engaged in authentic exchange without predetermined outcome, each maintaining autonomy while exploring potential connection. As evening concluded, Isabella suggested potential future dinner following her upcoming conference presentation. The invitation, casual yet deliberate, offered continuation without pressure, possibility without expectation. "I'd like that," Nate responded, genuine rather than automatic. "My schedule should accommodate that timing," Olivia agreed with characteristic pragmatism. Their departure maintained appropriate boundaries while acknowledging subtle but significant shift from enforced separation toward cautious connection based on present reality rather than past circumstances. Three perspectives on life's fundamental lessons converged through different paths toward similar conclusions. For Nate, transformation emerged through recognition that achievement without purpose created hollow success. The metrics he had prioritized, market dominance, wealth accumulation, competitive victory, provided diminishing satisfaction without meaningful foundation. True fulfillment required aligning accomplishment with values beyond personal advancement. Success without ethical framework ultimately fails, he explained during Tech Fusion's leadership retreat. Numbers without meaning become merely quantities rather than qualities worth pursuing. For Olivia, vindication arrived not through triumph over past injustice, but validation of principles long maintained despite significant cost. Her patient investment in both Isabella's development and Horizon's strategic position demonstrated how consistent values application created sustainable outcomes beyond reactive responses. Strategic patience coupled with ethical consistency produces results that tactical opportunism cannot match, she noted during Horizon's portfolio review. Long-term thinking requires values foundation to maintain proper direction. For Isabella, observation of both parents' journeys reinforced her independent development of integrated perspective combining technical brilliance with moral framework. Her research success demonstrated how ethical considerations enhanced rather than constrained innovation when properly incorporated into development processes. Technology without values inevitably optimizes for creator benefit rather than collective good, she explained during her keynote address. Integration of ethical frameworks with technical capability produces sustainable advancement rather than momentary advantage. These perspectives, developed through different experiences yet arriving at complementary conclusions, suggested universal principles transcending their specific circumstances. Achievement without purpose ultimately hollows. Patience coupled with principle ultimately prevails. Integration of capability with conscience creates sustainable rather than temporary success. Most significantly, all three recognized that genuine fulfillment required connection beyond individual accomplishment, whether through mentoring future innovators, investing in responsible enterprises, or developing frameworks benefiting broader society. Success redefined meant contribution beyond accumulation, impact beyond acquisition, meaning beyond metrics. Thank you for staying with me through this remarkable journey of redemption and accountability. If this story touched something in you about second chances and how it's never too late to make things right, hit that subscribe button right now. On Mr. Ross Story Trail, we explore these powerful human journeys that make us reflect on our own choices and relationships. Remember to share this video with someone who might need to hear that transformation is always possible when we have the courage to face our mistakes. Next week, I'll bring you another extraordinary true story that will challenge how you think about success and what really matters in life.